Welcome to the Rochester Community Schools Board of Education regular meeting called to order at 6:03 p.m. Tonight we have Eliza Pizzuti from Adams High School who will be singing the national anthem for us after we say the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you very much for that, Eliza. That was great. This Board of Education regular meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not a public community meeting. However, there is a time for public participation during the meeting. General public comment will be heard under Agenda Item 8.1, and community members may make comments prior to a vote on an action item. If you wish to speak tonight and have not already filled out a yellow card, they're located on the table near the entrance to the media center. Once you've completed the card, please hand it to a safe ed officer in a yellow shirt. Please note that cards must be completed prior to speaking. I will call the names of those who I have a card for during public comment. When addressing the board, you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and I will attempt to let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining. Please be mindful of this time limit. When addressing the board, state your name and your relationship to the district. Please address your comments to the entire board and not to individual board members, school district employees, or members of the audience. The board will not respond to comments or questions during the meeting. However, someone will follow up if needed. We also reserve the right to exclude from our meeting an individual who engages in conduct that constitutes a breach of the peace. To my board colleagues, I would like to remind everyone to please be respectful of each other and our administrators. The specific language can be found under Board Bylaw 0139.5 and 0139.6. On behalf of my colleagues on the board, we're grateful to be able to serve the community and appreciate your support. For roll call, all board members are present with the exception of Trustee Alsbach, who is absent with notice. Before we approve the agenda, I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Fragamenti for a moment of silence.
Thank you, President Butel. This past month, we were heartbroken to learn about the loss of loved ones in our school community. It is with great sadness that we share about the passing of Ethan Joyner, a student in our adult transition program and services who lost his courageous battle with cancer last week. Ethan was a true joy. He loved playing with Legos, working at the ATPS Jitters coffee shop, bowling, collecting Marvel statues, watching movies, and enjoying game night with his family. Our thoughts remain with Ethan's family and his friends during this very difficult time. We also mourn the loss of Nick Smart, a Rochester Adams graduate and Eagle Scout, who passed away following a tragic automobile accident. Nick is described as a lifelong learner who had an appetite for books. He loved writing and illustrating his own stories, working with animals, and exploring nature. We offer our sincere condolences to Nick's family. There is truly no greater loss than that of a child. At this time, we respectfully ask that you join us in observing a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. At this point, we are approving the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Trustee Annis and support by Trustee Gupta. Is there any discussion? Trustee Lakouи?
I'd like to add a topic to our agenda that we have a discussion about the literacy work session that we're going to have on January 29th and potentially turning that into a town hall kind of a format and including some other ideas. I've been in conversation with a couple other board trustees who have some good ideas that are even different than what I sent to you all this morning. So I would just like to propose that we have a discussion. I apologize in advance. I know I've brought up many literacy motions before at the board table, but this one is different. So hoping you will consider.
So Trustee Lakoui, to have a discussion regarding the work session in January? Is that the
Correct.
motion?
Yeah.
Okay, and is there support for that? Trustee Weaver? Any other discussion?
I'll say another piece, I suppose.
Okay, Trustee Lakoui?
So at the moment, we know that we're having a work session on January 29th. And I found out right before Thanksgiving break that it might turn into a literacy conversation. And I know we've had a literacy work session before in May. We had an achievement work session in September where we got some updates on literacy. And so one of my questions when I heard about this, it piqued my interest because I'm passionate about the topic of literacy. And I asked, what is going to be the purpose of the work session and what board action could potentially come from it?
Can we keep it to adding it
And-
to the agenda versus the actual
Oh,
item?
yes, I'm sorry. Please be patient for just one moment. So I was thinking, what if we changed this into more of a town hall format and potentially brought in other experts, other people to consider different ideas? And prior to having another literacy work session, what would you think about offering the community a town hall
Trustee
so we could
Lakoui,
hear their stories and questions?
This truly
And
sounds like
that
the
was,
rationale
pardon me,
for
President
the vote
Butel, I'm
versus
trying to
agenda.
explain why we would add this because I've mentioned several literacy motions before. And I just want people to understand why this discussion would be different from discussions that we've had before.
All right, does anyone else have any comments? Trustee Blake?
So I'm not really clear what's being exactly proposed here. The email I had earlier was that there would be a town hall. I had concerns or questions about that. Who would we have at the town hall? Would it be just parents? Would it be people from the district? Do we want to bring in other experts? And how do we vet those experts? Despite all those questions, if everybody else wants to talk about this, I'll vote to put it on the agenda. We have a pretty full agenda tonight, however.
Anyone else have any comments? Trustee Weaver?
I'm trying to clarify. So how I understand it is Trustee Lakoui is asking for us to talk about what the work session will be about.
Adding something the day of with no notice to be able to communicate with our administrative team or even time to really think about this, that I will not be approving this at this time, but would be potentially interested after that January session to discuss it. Trustee Lakoui.
Just to respond to that, The reason is because, we had Thanksgiving break. I didn't have something prepared in advance, but when I found out that we were planning to use this January work session to have a literacy conversation, I realized that there's a particular, I just thought it would be timely if we could discuss it now and begin troubleshooting what we might like to that session to look like and what ideas the board might have. And we don't necessarily have to make decisions, but it could be helpful to be able to talk as a full group in an open meeting to better prepare for what January 29th will look like.
All right, so at this point, we have a motion on the floor to add an agenda item to have a discussion regarding the work session in January. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. No. That's a 3-3 vote at this time. That will not be added. So we're back to the original motion to approve the agenda as presented. All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's a 7-0 vote. I'm sorry, a 6-0 vote, and the agenda is approved. At this point, we're moving on to our Spotlight on Success, and we're going to be highlighting our Wellness Dog Program and who will be leading that. I've got some people coming up here. Here we go.
Good evening, Mr. Silveri, Board of Education members and RCS leadership team, and wonderful audience here tonight. Sorry our backs to you, but good evening, everybody. I'm Pasquale Cusimano, principal of Rochester Adams High School. I am fortunate to have been an original member of the district's social emotional wellness task force that was introduced in February 2019. Joining me this evening is Paul Bednard, our Safe Ed security professional at Rochester High School, who has been assisting with managing the RCS Wellness Dog Program. Paul was a great fit to help us explore the use of trained canines to enhance student and staff well-being in our schools by introducing his dog Finn to RHS in 2019-2020 school year. Before Paul retired, he served with the City of Troy Police Department for 26 years. 18 of those were dedicated to working with the police canine unit. Under Paul's guidance, we have established basic guidelines for the Wellness Dog Program. At this time, canine teams are limited to 2 classroom teams per school and must be evaluated and approved by Paul before they can be introduced in our buildings. We have additional dogs that serve as district wellness dogs whose handlers are district support staff such as counselors, social workers, or other staff that are not classroom teachers. All certifications, vaccines, insurance riders must be on file with the district and are the financial responsibility and commitment by the dog handlers. So we look at this as a privilege for them to bring their canines to work and going through the process that we have established. Dogs remain under the control of their handlers and must have a leash and crate available for use in the classroom or work area. Many staff and students love these dogs, but we are always mindful of those who prefer limited or no contact with pets. I mean, that happens in schools every day. Their wishes are always respected and we work around and accommodate. To ensure the success of the Wellness Dog Program, we are grateful of our community partners who assist us with providing additional resources. We offer special thanks to our voluntary dog handlers, like Mrs. East over here, which I'll introduce in a minute. As Missy, sorry. Senora East.
There we go.
We offer special thanks to our voluntary staff as well as our partnership with the Fur Angels organization. You've probably seen pictures of them in our schools, but looking ahead, all of our approved dogs that go through our process will go through the training and certification process with the Fur Angels to be consistent and have another set of eyes on the dog and the handlers. We truly value our partnership with Fur Angels who love coming to our schools with their dogs and bringing joy and comfort for those who want it. We have some special guests with us this evening. Only a few of our 15, we have 15 wellness dogs and handlers, but from RCS, we have Beth East, RHS teacher with her dog Pablo, which is a lap dog as you can see, and is not shy.
Likes to be held like a baby.
Pablo is bilingual, speaks Spanish and English. And Paul Bednard, RHS staff, Safe Ed staff with his dog Finn, right here. There's also, I know one of my staff members, Allie Krantz, is back there with Gatsby, who's at Adams as well. So we're blessed to have these dogs. The following is, we want to show this short video that showcases the RCS Wellness Dog Program. While you watch this short video, just pay attention to what you notice and see an abundance of. Enjoy.
The Rochester Community Schools Wellness Dog Program began with a vision that aligned with the district's priority to support social-emotional learning. Following a year-long discussion with canine experts and building administrators to ensure the safest environment possible, a pilot program was introduced in September 2019 at Rochester High School. It wasn't long before the program was fully embraced by students, staff, and the community. Today, Rochester Community Schools has 13 wellness dogs that support student learning and development. The district is grateful for the many partnerships that enhance social emotional well-being. For more information about the Rochester Community Schools Wellness Dog Program, visit www.rochester.k12.mi.us.
Happiness. And again, I think the key is here is for those that want it, it's not forced upon anybody. And there are students who fear dogs, do not want to be around dogs, and we accommodate that. We don't force anything. So thank you for allowing us the time tonight to showcase and share this wonderful program that truly focuses on wellness and social emotional health for students and staff. Thank you.
Thank you for the update, and thank you for bringing your dogs. I was just smiling here watching them, and I love stopping in the schools and being able to see them. So I know they bring smiles to the students' faces and the parents and staff.
They also have trading cards. Did you know that?
I do not have any trading cards.
Yes, they do. I have several.
Do they trade those on the playground now? All right, well, we are moving on to agenda item 5.0, which is communications. This is where we share various communications that have been received since our last meeting. Item 5.1 is communication received by the board. Secretary Gupta, would you give us an update, please?
Sure. At this time, 9 communications have been received, and those are in the packet for everyone's reference.
Thank you. Agenda item 5.2 is our fabulous student representatives, and I think we have Lauren Cromie from Adams.
Perfect, thank you. Just a couple of things. We want to start off with what's been going on in Adams, what we've been trying to do. So Adams staff is committed to ensure every Highlander has a trusted adult in school. We're in the process of engaging in our trusted adult activity now that we're in the second quarter of the school year and things have kind of gone into place. The Adams staff have engaged in this for many years, and it's become a staple in building those positive relationships that make a difference in students' well-being as well as teachers and their achievements. Moving on from that, we recently held our annual can drive. This year, Student Council was dedicated to amp up the can drive more than ever before. We implemented new ideas to test out what raises the most, including a pancake breakfast, a Super Bowl field day, bucket wars, and raffles, all in support of the Rochester area neighborhood house. This year, Adams hosted our tri-high RCS high school student councils to choose our charity for our annual charity week. We had several members of the board actually join us for lunch and the selection process. This year, we're pleased to select Humble Design as our charity and are excited to support their vision. I want to highlight the play that went wrong. We have a great job to our theater department this year, along with some athletics. Girls golf got second place, their second title in a row. The boys soccer and girls swim all performed extremely well this past season. Moving forward, as the fall season has come to a close, we have now welcomed the winter sports, including basketball, wrestling, and ice hockey. Clubs are also in full swing with over 32 running, allowing kids to be engaged. Whether it's the Taylor Swift Club or DECA, there truly is something for everyone. I'm in both. Lastly, a highlight on our Veterans Day. We had a visit from Brigadier General John Cushing, an Adams alumni in the class of 1989. He met with the Adams Bots robotics team as he leads DevCom, which is oh my God, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's an Army-based field where they use engineering. So he was able to engage with our robotics team and really just create a relationship that will last forever. It was a great day for all of our staff and students to honor our vets, and I personally had the honor of meeting and speaking with a community veteran, which gave me so much perspective, but also just appreciation. All right, and I think that's about it for me. We want to thank everyone for their dedication, the other two high schools, as we continue with our Charity Week planning coming up in Student Council, and thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. And Kay Soriano.
Hello everyone, I'm so grateful to be here tonight, and Rochester has been very busy with all of our recent events. RHS Stugo just finished off our annual can drive very successfully, raising around $15,000 in a week for the neighborhood house, having over 50 teachers participate with their classes with our Frappe Friday event, as well as our annual neighborhood dash, where we distribute info on our can drive to our neighborhoods. We feel especially lucky because can drives and donations are responsible for over 2/3 of the neighborhood house's funds for the year, and we're so thankful to help a significant part of our community. Veterans Day was something we really emphasized within our school. Students put flags on Walton and Livernois intersection for the weekend, just like how we do every year. We also had a Veterans Day breakfast hosted by our SSNHS and our PTSA, and felt really honored that they had come, as well as a Veterans Day wall and a video featuring students with veteran connections. Our amazing Falcon Marching Band also performed in the Detroit Veterans Day Parade, which was an honor to be a part of. We also had some of our NHS members volunteer at the American Legion's Veterans Day Breakfast, which was also very special. Mean Girls the Musical ran the 16th to the 19th, which had all 5 performances sold out. The musical was amazing, if I do say so myself, and we have so much pride and respect for our theater department and all the hard work they have put into this production. This was our theater director, Mr. Gollin's 40th musical production and his last musical since he will be retiring this year. We are so thankful for the years and hours he has spent devoting himself to our rats. December 4th is our PD Day, which will be hosted at RHS for the district. They are going to be focusing on NPDLs and discussing the student support systems within our district. Clubs at Rochester are also getting busy. Justin Washington, an RHS senior, wrote a play about gun violence that won a competition through the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. His play was performed there on November 6th. Also, Social Studies Honor Society is hosting Rediscovering Rochester on December 6th from 6 to 8 p.m. We are inviting alumni to look at photos, yearbooks, and other artifacts from RHS's 141-year history for them to tell us more about them. Our esports club is also starting their competition season. Finally, Model UN has participated in 2 conferences already and has been very successful for the club and students. RHS is also kicking off our winter sports season. The RHS dance team has been very successful in their first 2 regional competitions, winning first and second in both competitions and 2 more regional competitions to come in January. Our swim season also started where they can condition and bond before they start competing, same with our ski team with dry land conditioning. On December 8th, we host Adams for boys and girls basketball, which is also a Toys and Tots drive. Earlier this month was Para-Educator Appreciation Day, and RHS just wants to thank all of our para-educators for what they do for students every single day, and our department wouldn't know what we would do without them. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. And Grace Monk from Stony Creek High School.
Good evening. In the past month, the Stony Creek community has been very busy with a variety of events and activities, making it an exciting and an eventful time for our school. Here are some highlights. Starting with clubs, Spanish NHS has started their Pulsera project. Students are selling hand-woven bracelets with proceeds to employ Guatemalan artisans. These proceeds create lasting change in their communities. Our psychology club successfully hosted a bake sale during lunch today, raising funds and spreading awareness for their events throughout the years. Remembering back on Hollow Week at Stony, Link Crew closed out our week with our annual Trunk or Treat event during lunches, where freshmen got to go outside and trick or treat from the cars lined in the courtyard. Our staff is excited to continue working on development at their December 4th PD, where they are getting to work in professional learning communities. Staff has also started doing monthly potlucks, and this Thursday they have November nachos. Our National Honor Society hosted their annual Veterans Day breakfast, giving Stony Creek a chance to show its thanks to the honorable men and women who've served our country. NHS has also begun their used toy and book drive. Proceeds will benefit kids at the neighborhood house and Ascension Hospital. Our theater company has been very busy as they just finished up with their amazing fall play and moved to begin with their winter one-act comedy titled A Whole Latte Love. As CHS Theater Co. is beginning auditions for the spring musical Legally Blonde in these next coming weeks. As we close out our fall sports season, SCHS wants to highlight our swim team for having 4 girls qualify to compete at states. Our cross-country team who sent their 2 runners to states, and our 2 athletes from the men's tennis team for being awarded Division I All-State honors. All these teams have made our school very proud. Right before Thanksgiving, Student Council finished up with our annual canned food drive, where we collected a grand total of 2,997 pounds of food, crushing our school record. These proceeds went to benefit the Rochester Area Neighborhood House and showed our school the importance of helping out our community. Speaking of the holiday season, sign-ups for our Giving Tree have just opened up. Students and families can sign up to donate gift cards to help Stony families in need this holiday season. Student Council is also hosting a Cookies and Cocoa event on December 15th, where students who donate can decorate cookies and drink hot cocoa during their 3rd hour. We have also begun planning our Holiday Spirit Week with classics such as PJ Day, Ugly Sweater Day, and Winter Whiteout. As the school year progresses, we continue to witness the remarkable achievements and community spirit that define Stony Creek. I look forward to the continued collaboration between our school and the Rochester Community School Board. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we're moving on to agenda item 5.3, which is citizens requesting placement on the agenda. And tonight we have one citizen who has requested placement. If Tara Donnelly would please come forward. In the future, if anyone is interested in requesting placement, there's a form under the Board of Education on our website, and those requests are due by noon 3 business days prior to our meeting, which would be Wednesday for a Monday night meeting. Mrs. Donnelly?
Good evening. Welcome back. I hope all of you had a good Thanksgiving vacation. My name is Tara Donnelly, and I'm an RCS alum. I'm actually a West alum, too. I went to West so long ago that this was a junior high school when I went, so that's how long ago it's been. I would like to discuss the memo that I saw posted online earlier today from Mr. Silveri, dated November 10th, regarding the Collins and Blaha invoices with the Bassett and Bassett disbursement fees. These invoices are dated from September 2022 through February 2023. And according to the memo, RCS hired Bassett and Bassett to play a crisis response role during this time period and identify negative media activity and coordinate with the law firm and school officials on whether a response was warranted, and if so, the content of the response. I have a few follow-up questions about this memo. First of all, the optics of paying Bassett and Bassett $40,000 through a law firm is just, it's kind of terrible. Why didn't RCS pay Bassett and Bassett directly instead of setting these payments up through Collins and Blaha, especially since RCS has engaged Bassett and Bassett directly in the past? Second, what was the crisis between September 2022 through February 2023? Was it the election? Third, since it sounds like Bassett and Bassett was doing the same thing as the RCS PR department was during the depositions, why did administrators use attorney-client privilege as a reason to withhold invoice details from trustees? And finally, why did it take so long to get answers about these invoices? I personally don't think this is enough detail, at least based on the memo I saw, but Trustee Litkui had asked about the invoices at the July 31st board meeting, and this memo was dated November 10th, and I saw it for the first time today on a trustee's blog. So I'm going to take a moment to explain why this issue matters. For some folks, this is just $40,000. In the context of a multi-million-dollar budget, $40,000 is a drop in the bucket, but to me and to many others in this community, $40,000 spent on Bassett and Bassett services is $40,000 that didn't go towards teachers and classrooms and ultimately to our students. $40,000 is equal to 80 teachers receiving $500 gift cards for their classrooms at the beginning of the school year. Since there are about 26 to 27 teachers at each elementary school, $40,000 is giving each teacher at 3 elementary schools a $500 gift card for their classroom budget at the start of the school year. So $40,000 matters a lot to community members like me who think teachers shouldn't have to pay for classroom items out of their own pockets. I would like to thank you for your time and attention this evening and wish all of you a good evening.
Thank you. Agenda item 5.4 is the section where members of the Board of Education share communications that were shared directly with them and were not sent to the full board. Did any board members receive communication from the public? Trustee Litkui?
Yeah, Jan Iserman contacted me on October 27th to follow up on a note she'd sent to the board about boating safety classes. I'm hoping that somebody from the administration followed up with her. Deanna Harless also contacted President Butel and me separately on November 17th after I noticed that her attachment didn't go through to the board portal. She was not notified about this. And after some back and forth, we found out there's an issue with our external vendor, and I look forward to hearing that the problem will be resolved soon. I also found out that it looks like our board portal isn't functioning consistently. Some people were having problems sending messages to the board earlier today, I suppose, perhaps with getting a code or it taking a long time. So would be another thing to bring up to the tech team.
And I would just say for that one, if you could forward that information, because I have not seen that.
Absolutely. Yep.
Trustee Gupta, did you have one?
Yep. I heard from community member Julie Stalker regarding district policies on bullying, harassment, hate speech as it occurs electronically. I also heard from Melissa Hoffman regarding a tribute to Ethan Joyner at an upcoming Lego League tournament being hosted at RHS. And I heard from community member Sam D'Angelo regarding Lego League meeting space at Hugger Elementary.
Thank you. Was there anyone else? I communicated with Jan Wilhite Iserman as well regarding a boating safety class that she would like to have, and she has been put in touch with someone in the administration. All right. Agenda items 5.5 through 5.7 are updates from parent groups in our district. The first we have is PTA Council update from Jamie Sachs.
Hello, I'm Jamie Sack, PTA Council Secretary. Just a couple updates for you tonight. Our Green Schools teams are collecting holiday lights for recycling. Collection boxes will be in participating school lobbies from now through January 12th. The Battle of the Books had its first battle earlier this month. The next one is scheduled on December 13th at Adams High School. The STEM Plus Families event on November 4th was a huge success. Our STEM team is working on kits so that elementary schools can host their own after-school STEM events. For Founders Day, we are currently accepting nominations for district-wide awards. The logo contest is also still open. Students can submit their logo designs. Both nominations and logo designs are due by December 1st. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Next, we have our PAC update from Melissa Hoffman.
I want to begin by thanking Mrs. Fragomeni and Rochester Community Schools for remembering the Joyner family and Ethan. Pauline Joyner had been a longtime dedicated member of the PAC and is a dear friend of many of us. And as any of you know, if you've ever lost a loved one, often the first week after you lose someone, you are surrounded by family and friends, and then during that first week, and then you go home the second week, and that's when you feel the silence. So we ask that you remember them as they enter this beginning of the second week, and keep them in your thoughts and prayers. So thank you. Our October meeting was held October 24th at North Hill Elementary. We were joined by Interim Superintendent John Silveri, DEI Director Ann Prasher, Board of Education Trustee Carol Beth Lacouey, Principal Tamara Jones-Jackson, and our topics included the role of special ed from an equity and inclusion standpoint, our challenges in literacy curriculum, our current staffing shortages in our special ed, and we also discussed the issues of days of removal in special ed. On November 18th, we hosted our biggest ever sensory-friendly Santa at the firehouse, which we gave over 50 families who might not otherwise have had a holiday experience, a private and dignified opportunity to visit with Santa. We want to thank the Rochester Fire Department for hosting us and to all of our volunteers. Coming up on December 6th at 7 p.m. in Stony Creek in the Media Center, the ARC of Oakland County will be joining us to talk about the services that they offer, including advocacy for special needs populations, supported decision making, the Forever Plan, and more. The program is free and open to the public. Today marks 91 days since the beginning of the school year. Back in August, we had several openings for categorical special education teachers that left our district open to non-compliance had we not filled them by the 90th day. I'm happy to report that as of today, all those roles are filled, but that doesn't mean we can just move on. It wasn't easy. Many of our staff members had to scramble to cover those roles, and many worked very hard to find people. So I want to say thank you to all those staff members who worked hard in the interim. Our families, thank you to those that had to cope with changes. And I want to remind us that there is an ongoing massive shortage of special ed teachers and staff. And I think the best way to face that is to remember that as we move into our next to move into our upcoming negotiations, and remember that and pay competitively. And I do want to thank everybody that worked hard and remembered our families, including my own. Excuse me. Families in need of special ed support are always encouraged to reach out to the PAC at any time. All general PAC meetings are public. Parents of IEP or 504 students are encouraged to attend all of our meetings. Our next meeting is tomorrow at Ruther Middle School at 7 p.m. We hope you can join us. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, I believe we have Lauren Gracie Parker, who will be providing an update from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Parent Network.
Hello, and good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Lauren Gracie Parker, and I'm providing the update for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Parent Network. This month, as we begin the season of gratitude, we want to express our thanks for the board, administration, staff, parents, and most importantly, our students. RCS is filled with amazing students, and it is our honor to support them. Further, we thank the administration and its efforts in helping our students feel safe and supported during the season and beyond. We would like to acknowledge the new additions to our DEIP and leadership team. Eddie Hillary, Amelia Creter, as well as myself, Lauren Gracie Parker, have joined for the 2023-2024 school year. Our November meeting was canceled to allow for full engagement in our district focus groups for the RCS strategic plan. This has been an amazing process to allow our voices to be heard. For the December meeting, DEIPN will explore what it means to be an ally. This meeting will include how to have difficult conversations and remain friends. Attendees will be invited to run through scenarios and to participate in trainings. We invite everyone to join us. The meeting will be held on December 13th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. here at the West Middle School Media Center. If you would like to reach out to DEIPN, you can reach us through our Facebook page, email at rcsdeipn@gmail.com, or by directly messaging DI Director Ann Fresher. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For anyone who is still standing, there are 11 seats up front if anyone wants to join. If there is a nameplate, you can just put it underneath the seat, would be fine. So feel free to come up if you'd like. Agenda item 6.0 is the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered routine in nature by the Board of Education and will be acted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If any member of the board or any citizen requests discussion of an item, that item will be removed. Please note that we have made a change to how we handle items that are asked to be removed. The item removed will now be discussed separately under the consent agenda and will retain the same number. For instance, if item 6.1 is asked to be removed, we would vote on items 6.2 through 6.13, and then we would come back to 6.1 for a motion, discussion, and vote. Keep in mind that you may still request just one item on a report to be removed from the consent agenda. If this is the case, we would approve everything else, and the item removed from the report would receive a new number. In this case, it would be 6.14, but still under the consent agenda. The reason for this change is to make it easier for everyone following the agenda that has been posted for community members to identify what item they wish to comment on and for our recording company to be able to accurately reflect where we are on the agenda. So our agenda consists of 6.1 Annual Summer Tax Collection Resolution, 6.2 Health Insurance Resolution, 6.3 Emergency Operations Plan Resolution, 6.4 Current Bills Payable for October 1st, 2023 through October 31st, 2023 in the amount of $19,505,489.77. Item 6.5, Human Resource Recommendations. Item 6.6, Board of Education Regular Meeting Minutes from October 16th, 2023. 6.7, Board of Education Work Session Minutes from October 23rd, 2023. 6.8, Board of Education Special Meeting Minutes from November 6th, 2023. 6.9, Board of Education Closed Meeting Minutes from November 13th, 2023. 6.10, Board of Education Work Session Minutes from November 13th, 2023. 6.11, Approval of Ray and Associates Contract. 6.12, the Oakland County Superintendents Association and the Oakland County School Board Association Joint Meeting for John Silveri, Michelle Butel, Barb Annis, and Julie Alsbach in the amount of $180. 6.13, the National School Board Association Advocacy Institute for Barb Annis in the amount of $2,060.56, excluding taxes. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Moved by Trustee Gupta, support by, I'll support myself, Michelle Butel. Is there any discussion on this? Mrs. LaCouey.
I'd like to remove item 6.4, current bills payable.
Anyone else? All right, so there is a motion to approve 6.1 through 6.3 and 6.5 through 6.1 or 6.13. No, there is no discussion. All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain.
That's a 4-0-2 vote. And those consent items do pass. We now will go back to current bills 6.4, which is current bills payable for October 1st, 2023 through October 31st, 2023 in the amount of $19,505,489.77. Do I have someone to approve that, a motion to approve that? Moved by Trustee Annis, support by Trustee Gupta and Mrs. LaCouey.
I will need to abstain from this vote as we don't approve these bills before they're paid, and I have not received answers about my concern about management override of our financial controls. For example, back on July 31st, I noticed a strange set of 6 legal invoices that came to us at once. The only description on the invoices said disbursement fees, and it was signed okay to pay by our Deputy Superintendent of Business Operations, Matt McDaniel. It appears that over the course of several months, our district was funneling taxpayer money through a law firm, Collins and Blaha, to a PR firm, Bassett and Bassett. I asked questions about this, both privately and publicly, for over 100 days. Finally, after I contacted our financial auditor, the district answered that the law firm and the PR firm were engaged in this crisis response role to help our district identify and respond to negative criticisms leveled against the district via social media, news media, and copious FOIA requests.
Trustee LaCouey, so
Now,
you're
that's-
commenting on
Point of order,
these-
President Butel. I am substantiating my concern that was unaddressed about financial override of controls.
Okay, so nothing
So-
specific on this, though. I just
It is about bills payable, because it first came up during bills payable, and this problem about financial override of controls, management override of financial controls, continues to go unaddressed. And I don't want to be accused of making unsubstantiated allegations. So I want to fully explain why I will need to abstain from voting on bills payable. So it's concerning enough, the activity that was going on. However, all the board can see is a notice of cash disbursement. We don't know what other activity could be going on like this. We do know that it happened several times. There's no purchase order. There is no scope of work document. There are no sublet invoices to show for what we actually paid. Administration has said that no written documentation exists for about $40,000 worth of work. It's like if I went on a business trip and I had to fill out a travel expense report, and instead of including receipts to show the services that I was using, I just included ATM slips. What kind of company would approve that? But unfortunately, that appears to be what we were doing in this case, and I don't know where else that has been going on. So that's why I'm concerned, and unfortunately, that's why I will continue to abstain from voting on this.
Trustee Blake.
On that same note, I'd like to say 2 things. One, I'll respond to that in a moment. I did ask when the first meeting on the board, if we could change to a process whereby all of the invoices were made available to trustees in advance. And I believe I was told that we're working on that. And I think I talked to Mr. Silveri, and he still said we're working on it. So I don't know what that means or where we are in the process or how difficult it will be, but I just think that's something we need to move to so that we don't continue to have these suspicions raised. In response to Trustee Lukui, though, I would just say this. I too am concerned about the amount of time that it took for this to get resolved. I don't share her characterization of the whole situation, but I think it's problematic when it takes 100 days to get something resolved, to get to where we are. And I don't really understand why it took that long. And my concern is more, not so much that I think something terrible is happening, because I don't, but I hear these characterizations of the district as having all of these financial improprieties and all of this fraud. I don't think the facts bear that out. But when something like this happens and it lingers on, it makes people think that. I'm also concerned that we have hundreds of people that work in this district that come to work every single day, that work hard, that don't do anything wrong, and they're being somehow tarred whenever there's an allegation that there's all this bad stuff going on in the district. It reflects back on the employees ultimately. So I hope in the future, when whatever the situation is, that we can get that resolved faster. It's not fair to the people who work in this district to allow these narratives to fester and grow.
Trustee Weaver?
So I find it somewhat concerning that appointee Blake is calling this issue resolved, because it's not resolved. There's plenty of questions. Again, a member of our community just asked a handful of them that absolutely are still open questions. Two is a point of the cloud of suspicion that has been raised by myself as well, and why we've talked about needing an appropriate audit done, because again, there are unfortunately far too many questions that aren't answered correctly. They go way too long, and again, in this case, we actually got the answer that we are paying Bassett and Bassett through Collins and Blaha to surveillance social media, which the district was sued in federal court for violating a parent's First Amendment right, where in the depositions, it found out we were paying employees to do that and collect the information to be used to target critics of the district. This is said right in the memo. So we are outsourcing. We said, okay.
Trustee Weaver, can we please keep
No,
it to these bills?
I'm speaking
Accounts
directly
payable?
to these bills. Collins Blaha's on this one. And I'm
I'm
addressing.
sorry, I just heard you talking about other employees, so.
Absolutely, because we paid them as well. And I'm referring to the memo that goes directly to these. So
But
again,
we're talking about accounts payable.
I understand you do not like the facts that are being addressed, because
Trustee
you
Weaver,
sat
you
on
have
the
an
board. You
opportunity
sat on the
at
board.
the end of the meeting
you
to talk
sat
about
on
anything
the,
that you
You
wish.
sat on
At
the
this
board.
point, we're talking about
I am
accounts
talking
payable.
about the Collins and Blaha payments, and I'm addressing
There-
the comments that you did not interrupt anybody else on that were made.
I am talking
so
about
again,
the accounts
I am
payable
talking
at this
about
point.
accounts payable.
Okay, as long as it occurs
I am talking about accounts payable.
with the ones that are on here right
I
now.
am talking about accounts payable,
As
just
long
like
as they have to
everybody,
do.
just like everybody else did. The fact that you sat on the board and you condoned the past behavior, and now you're upset that we are challenging, that we are
Trustee Weaver,
outsourcing.
Point
we
of
are
order, please.
We are outsourcing in the memo that specifically says we paid Collins and Blaha to pay Bassett and Bassett to basically do what we were sued for. And just for, again, people that
Trustee
sit here
Weaver, there
and
is
say,
nothing on these accounts payable.
Collins and Blaha
with-
is paid on here.
There
Collins
is
and Blaha
nothing
is paid
on
on
here,
here.
though, with, that has to do with,
Collins and Blaha is paid on here.
But on
and
those
I'm addressing
invoices,
the
there is
comments.
nothing
I'm
in regard
addressing
to
the
that.
other comments that were made. So again,
But we are
the memo
discussing
is clear.
the
So
accounts payable.
who authorized Collins and Blaha to start this activity? Who authorized it? It absolutely is a germane question. Maybe if you'd
This is
asked
not
more,
the
we would be getting
accounts-
sued as often.
this is not in the accounts payable right
Collins
now.
and-
Are you talking about
Who
specifically who authorized
who
something on these
authorized
bills?
Collins and Blaha to use Bassett and Bassett in this manner? Who authorized that transaction?
I have no idea.
You know that?
Well, his initials are on there, and he had the authority to do it, so you don't have to like it.
McDaniel, you signed it.
Seconded it, but the initial was.
Okay. Can we please, Mr. Silveri?
I have a comment. I'm a board member, and it's a board meeting.
I have recognized Mr. Silveri at this moment, so
Is
one
he going to
moment.
answer the question that was asked?
I'll speak to this issue later in the meeting. I don't want to get into a debate over it now.
We don't want to talk about finances during the financial section of the debate, of the
This
of
is
the
not
meeting?
the financial, this is the
We're
accounts
talking
payable
about
at this
accounts
moment.
payable.
Okay, trustee Lakui.
I just wanted to ask trustee Blake how the situation has been resolved, because I'm wondering if you've seen a scope of work document or a purchase order or anything else that goes along with this. The explanation that we were provided, it actually doesn't make sense that there would be no written documentation if.
Again, this has nothing to do with the
This
accounts
has to do
payable
with
at this
financial
moment.
override, it's management override of financial controls, which
But,
is
but that's not
why
what we're voting
I'm
on.
not-
We are voting
I
on
talked-
accounts payable.
I'm responding to trustee Blake because he responded to my concern about this. And I'm wondering, has it been resolved? If it's been resolved, maybe I can vote on these items, you know? Have you seen more than I've seen? Have you seen written documentation to lead me to believe that we're not actually having any problems?
I've not seen anything that's being kept from you.
Okay, so that's the issue that I have with bills payable, is that there should be invoices with descriptions of what services are being provided to us. This sort of thing has caused problems in other school districts. You know, like if you look at Detroit, for instance. Like, this is a
Trustee
concern.
Lakui, if you
Our
have a
board
concern
shouldn't
about
be-
the overrides, so then why don't you draft something that you think should be taken up by the board that would correct whatever it is you're looking for? So why don't you draft that and bring it forward? Not on the day of a meeting, but a week beforehand, so that we have an opportunity to review it.
President Butel, are you okay with approving invoices that have no descriptions on them? If you got a credit card from somebody and it said $40,000 from the lawyers you hired and they said, oh, we
Trustee
consulted
Lakui?
with experts, so you don't
I
have to worry
agree.
about
I have
that.
asked as well that we have access to all of the invoices, which I understand that they are looking into trying to find a way to make that an option.
We were provided invoices, but there was nothing on them. Can you tell me what reason we would have for billing Bassett and Bassett through Collins and Blaha? What reason is there to do that instead of paying them directly?
Are you asking for some form of policy that would, anytime an invoice was received, that they would turn it back so that it had detail? I mean, is that what you're looking for? And if it is, then why don't you draft something and bring it forward?
I'm asking why our district, why RCS would bill a PR firm through a law firm. Just tell me why. Maybe we don't need a policy. Maybe if that's normal behavior, we were told this is normal. What was the reason for doing it in that way?
I don't know if anyone in the administration has an answer for that.
I'll speak to it later in the meeting.
I can think of no good reason for doing that except to skirt transparency law.
All right. Is there trustee Gupta? All right. Is trustee Blake?
I think the three people who know that are unfortunately people that we can't ask. Our superintendent's not here anymore. We fired the law firm. We were fired by the PR firm. I'm not saying that the way this went is the way I think it should have been done. I have issues with the way it was done, but at this point today, what can we do? Those people are not around. The conduct underlying is not anything that is criminal. It may not be what we want to have happen going forward, meaning the employment of this firm and what they were doing. So we can set up things so it doesn't happen going forward. We can set up things so that there's another layer of insight or of oversight on legal invoices. We can do things going forward. I just don't know what we can do going backwards.
All right. Trustee Weaver.
Appointee Blake, are you going to say...
I'm sorry, everyone at this table is a trustee, so please address them accordingly.
Appointee Blake.
Trustee Blake. Trustee Weaver,
I'm going to ask
please.
specifically, again, as you are a lawyer, would there not be any record of what was done? We're going to say, again, going off what the memo specifically says right on it, they identified crisis management. We would have no record whatsoever of any crisis in which they identified. We'd have no communication, and you're going to say that was solely communicated with one person? But yet, at the board meetings, we were told that we were going to get an answer, and then all of a sudden the answer didn't want to come out. So, as a lawyer, you're really going to say you believe that we would pay $40,000, put out a memo that says this is what Bassett Investment were doing. They were surveillancing social media
Trustee
to
Weaver,
identify
could you
crises.
please keep it to the
and have
topic
it
at hand, which is
respond,
the accounts payable?
And we have no record whatsoever? You
I
believe
did
that?
not say that that's how I would do it or that there shouldn't be records. I'm saying that it appears there are not. So this is the situation that we are in. I don't know how we find this out. We could look and see if there are any emails from Dr. Shaner to Bassett and Bassett. That's the only other thing I can think of. It's highly unusual that the whole thing played out the way it did. But what does that show? It shows that that this was an unusual situation. I haven't said that this is ideal. I will say that it's not that unusual for an attorney to bill a professional or an expert through their billing. It is unusual to never be able to find out what those are for. I will give you that. But here we are. So are we going to talk another hour about this? Are we going to talk next time? How about the time after that? I mean, how much time are we going to put into this?
Trustee Annis?
I'd like to call the question, Madam President.
There's a motion to call the prior question. Is there support for that? That is by Trustee Gupta. All those in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That is a 4-2 vote. The question has been called. We now move to public comment. Mr. Raymond.
Am I on? Okay. Good evening, Board of Education and Administration. A couple years ago, RCS administration admitted under oath in Denverno versus RCS that 2 employees monitored over 300 parents on social media when they raised issues about the school district or individual schools. In one instance, this was used to call an employer. Other instances resulted in calls to police, none of which resulted in charges. Cease and desist letters from Collins and Blaha, and angry phone calls from Dr. Shaner to parents. Yes, I received a couple. What the monitoring did not result in was the issues being resolved. The issues continued with attempts to frighten parents into not posting about them. To this day, there are parents who are concerned about retaliation. Parents are partners, not problems. There are teachers who won't speak out, worried about retaliation. Is our administration monitoring our teachers on social media? Would we get a straight answer? The community made it very clear this was entirely unethical and unacceptable. Foolishly, some believed that the district had stopped this practice. Instead, the administration decided to continue this practice, but used deceptive methods to hide it going forward. Have another company do the monitoring so the district could claim employees weren't engaged. Pay this company via a law firm to hide it even further. Why the cover-up if administration didn't know this was a despicable practice that the community hated? Maybe the practice stopped, but the cover-up continued long after Shaner was gone. In comments Matt made at Board of Ed meetings, he obviously knew the reason for the invoices, yet did everything he could to prevent the reason from coming out. Trustees had several chances to hear the information, but the majority chose to suppress it, even referring to it as a fishing expedition. Mr. Silveri's letter called it a common practice. Perhaps that is the case. If so, no wonder school districts are experiencing so many issues. Mr. Silveri's letter doesn't say that this has stopped, merely that a strategic communications firm is not employed to do so. Has it stopped? Or should parents still fear our district? Thank you.
Mr. Baldick?
I'm Rick Baldick, resident of the district. Obviously, the topic is, bills payable, and we're looking at that. And here's my problem with it. There's a lot of people outraged, and justifiably so, by the situation. Some of them with the amount of money, some of them, you know, with what they were doing. Here's my problem. We have transparency laws in this state for a reason, okay? They don't just cover FOIA. School districts have to post people that make more than 100 grand. They have to post the check register. They have to do a whole bunch of things, okay? And what was laid out here is a deliberate attempt to circumvent the state's transparency laws. And that's what bothers me. You could look at a check register and say, let's see what the school's doing. Boom, boom. Well, guess what? Now you can't look at your check register and trust it, okay? Because there was no invoice, there was no check. If there's no check, there's nothing in the register. It gets routed through a law firm, and then somebody says, well, I want to see the legal invoice. They go, attorney-client privilege. No. That's a circumvention of transparency laws. Don't do that, okay? How can anybody in the community trust you? If I want to look and see what you spent, now I'm not worried about what I see, I'm worried about what I don't see. That's the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, all of those in favor of approving the accounts, the current bills payable for October 1st, 2023 through October 31st, 2023 in the amount of $19,505,489.77, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain.
Abstain.
That's a 4-0-2 vote, and so the bills payable, current bills payable was approved. All right, we are now moving to new business. The first item, agenda item 7.1, is the audit presentation. Mr. McDaniel, I believe this is you.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to introduce Akshay Kapoor, principal from Lewis and Knopf. He was the principal on the team that conducted the district's audit, and he has actually just traveled back from India yesterday, so he might be a little groggy, but we're thankful that Akshay is here. Akshay, you can have a seat at the table if you like. So this is our annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th of 2023. And it is the district's responsibility to complete these financials, though it is Akshay and Lewis and Knopf's duty to audit them. So we'll start off with the financial presentation, but we'll start off with the auditor's opinion.
Hi, everybody. I just want to thank you, Matt and the team, for catering us for 7 days, or around probably a week and 2 days audit that we were, because it's tough to do a day-to-day work and probably answer all our questions too. We probably team of 5 people that were here for Monday to Friday, and then I think actually for a couple of days that we were in the office, Matt helped us through some of the stuff too. So we actually look at the financial statement to provide an opinion on the financial statements if they're materially stated. So, and we do a reasonable assurance because we don't look at 100% of the transactions. That's why we can't give you absolute assurance. So we do have like a materiality in our mind that we look at. So if the amount is less than what the materiality number is, then we still think actually the financial statements are materially correct. So in our opinion, the financial statement referred for June 30th, 2023, they were materially stated. We didn't find any internal control issues. We also do the federal audit as well, which is called a single audit. We end up actually around 18 million in single audit federal funds that were spent, and then we tested the ESSER fund, which was around $10.1 million. And we look at the internal controls for that ESSER funds, and we look at 60 transactions for the internal control purposes. We don't provide any opinion on the effectiveness of the controls, but we do look at the controls. So we didn't have any issues with any of the expenditures that happened for the federal funds as well. So that's the highest level of assurance that you can receive on the financial statements.
Yeah, so we actually have a PowerPoint presentation that, we able to bring that up on the screen? Yeah, we have the handout. Yeah, it's in the packet. I can send it to you, Lori. Yeah, so actually, while I'm pulling this up, do you want to, I don't know, maybe you've already finished off the audit was conducted in accordance with
Yeah.
and explain some of those guidance and standards?
So we basically, the financial statements, we provide the opinion on the financial statements on fund level and also on the government-wide financial statements. So, and we look at each and every aspect of the fund accounting and then government-wide financial statement, because the books for the school district on the fund level, it's based on modified accrual basis method. So, so that's why we also look at which ones are the major funds, which one are the non-major funds. So as of June 30th, 2023, we were in our opinion, the financials are referred to about present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the government equity, each major fund, and the aggregated remaining fund. And also, like I said before, the single audit was in compliance as well, because what we do is if you have federal expenditures that are over $750,000, then we have to perform a single audit. And since Rochester Community Schools is a low risk audit for us, so we have to test at least 20% of their total fund spending during the year, but we probably tested over 50% of the total funds that were spent for the ESSERS fund. I can keep on going. So the district received an unmodified audit opinion. This is the highest level of assurance possible for the district's financial statement. The audit was conducted in accordance with the general accepted auditing standards, governmental audit standards, and unified guidance standards for the districts, which is for the federal funds.
Yeah, so next we'll get into the financial statements. So I think as everyone's aware that our general fund is driven by the state aid membership. So on slide 4 of the presentation, you'll see about 10 years worth of data of where our enrollment, our FTE membership has been starting in 2012, 2013 with just over 15,000. That dipped a little bit in 14-15 and then increased to its highest total in 1920. And then in 2021 to current, it stayed just under 15,000, 14,985 in 2021, 14,983 in 21-22, and 14,955 in 22-23. The foundational allowance of that. So 51% of that is that foundational allowance, that per pupil funding. You'll see 9% is property taxes. That's the 18 mills that we levy on non-homestead property, and we'll actually talk a little bit about that later on. 9% is also federal grants, and then the purple area, 31%, is broken up, and you'll see it in the chart on the right. That 15% is other state revenue. 6% is inter-district sources, which is mostly Public Act 18 funding. We have other local revenue, so this might be pay-to-play fees. This could be school-age care, pre-K. And then 7% of that is 2 state grants, 31A at risk, and our special education reimbursement. Moving on, another slide that we like to highlight is the due from state and other governmental units. So our fiscal year ends June 30th of each year. We receive a state aid payment for that fiscal year in July and August. And then federal grants are almost exclusively on a reimbursement basis, so we need to expend the funds and then request the funds from the federal government. So you can see that it was pretty steady to the left there in 12-13. Kind of stayed that way until 2021, which everybody knows it was the start of the pandemic and some additional government funding. Also with the state per pupil foundational allowance increase, that's increased those July and August payments, meaning that we have more funds due from other governmental entities when our fiscal year ends on June 30th. There is some risk there. I want to point out in 2020, the state actually cut our foundational allowance. Fortunately, there was federal revenue that offset that and actually increased the revenue available to the school district, but it's possible that if there were a recession that was unanticipated or unexpected, there could be decreases to our revenue well after our fiscal year has ended. Moving on, you'll see that 80% of all of our general fund expenditures, these are salaries and benefits, right? We're a people business. 12% of that is purchase services. Purchase services include, Durham School Services, our transportation provider, ABM, our custodial and grounds. This could include EDGE staff, our substitutes. Legal services is another place where you'll find purchase services. 4% is supplies and materials. And then the remaining 4% is split pretty equally. 2% is capital outlay and 2% is other expenditures. Other expenditures could be dues and fees or association memberships paid to MASB, paid to MASA, paid to Michigan School Business Officials. Next, we'll look at our 10-year trend. And you'll see that the green line there is expenditures, and in 12-13, you'll see that expenditures actually exceeded revenue. Stayed that way in 13-14, and then since then, we've been able to keep the revenues higher than expenditures, though in some years just very slightly. That's had an impact on our general fund balance. And you'll see in 12-13, 13-14, and 14-15 that fund balance stayed pretty consistent. And then increased 15-16 through about 19-20, stabilized in 21 and 22, and then we have an increase in 22-23. Total ending fund balance for the general fund is $43,595,856. That fund balance is broken into a few different categories. Some of it is non-spendable, like the $592,539. These are items that were prepaid or inventory. You'll see assigned for subsequent year expenditures, and then the total unassigned, or essentially the total available, almost $43 million, $42,770,000. And the district or the board has the ability to restrict or commit or assign fund balance as well. The board can take action to commit fund balance. Sometimes that happens if we were saving up for a certain project that the board wanted to pursue. We could commit fund balance. And then in the future, if we use that fund balance, it would come out of that committed. Any questions on the general fund before we get into the other district funds?
Yes. Are we going to be having another budget update in December?
Yeah, we're working on that with Mr. Silveri, and I'm not sure what the timeline is on that, but it's in progress.
Oh, okay.
Matt, can I add something?
Sure.
The one thing that you do want to note on this slide is the fund balance as a percentage of expenditure is 19.4%. So this is kind of actually the number that usually you want this number to be not go extensively high, like more than 30%, because right now the district is always in the business of actually providing education to the kids. But you do want to have the fund balance left, because we have seen during the COVID times we had to spend money on technology and upgrades. So this money should be used towards education, and that's why the fund balance stays there, so that if in future needs any improvements, even to the building, to any of the technology side, that we can use this money towards that. But we always do not want to focus on this number at the percentage wise, because again, we are in providing education to the kids. We want to keep this number to where it's comfortable level for the district, that if they have any expenditure that come through, that they can pay it. But we don't want it to keep on jumping high and high and high. So, but this 19.4% is pretty good number to be on the fund balance side.
Yeah, and the board does have a policy of keeping at least 10% in fund balance. One other piece that fund balance helps us to do is some school districts have to borrow using a state aid anticipation note to pay payroll, items like that, because we're not really being paid by the state for our fiscal year until October of each school year. So that's fortunate for us that we don't have to borrow, we don't have to pay interest on notes, so that we can make payroll. In past schools that I worked for, that's always been a standard operating procedure that we need to borrow. So we're fortunate in Rochester that we don't have to do that. Moving on, we'll take a quick look at the remaining funds. The Capital Projects Fund, this is the bond fund. You'll see that there's about $250,000 in revenue. This is mostly interest from investments, and about $6 million worth of expenditures. This bond fund is coming to the end. This is the last year that we'll have the bond fund. So there's no alarm there to show expenditures exceeding revenue by a significant amount. Moving on to the next slide, you'll see that we have about $5.3 million remaining. And we have some projects later on this evening that will help continue to spend this bond fund down. But essentially $124 million in 15-16. We spent bond funds for the next 3 years before issuing Series 2. That's why in 18-19 you see an increase in fund balance, and then we've continued to spend that down. On the next slide, you'll see the remaining funds, the non-major funds, which include the Caring Steps Fund, the Bookstore Fund, the Debt Service Fund, the Food Service Fund, the Sinking Fund, and Student Activities. And you'll see that all in all, these funds perform very well. Caring Steps, revenues met expenditures with a transfer from the general fund to support that. The Bookstore Fund had revenues that slightly exceeded expenditures. The Debt Fund had expenditures that slightly exceeded revenues, but we've also paid off 2 debt issues, so we don't need to carry as large a fund balance in that fund to support those payments. Food Service Fund made money. We continue to work to spend down that money. The Sinking Fund, $8.8 million in revenue, $7.1 million in expenditures. That carryover money can continue to be utilized to support district projects, and again, we'll have some projects that we approve later on. And then the Student Activities, very similar, revenue slightly exceeding expenditures. So on the next slide, you'll see what that's done to fund balance. Caring Steps, carrying no fund balance. Bookstore Fund is a small amount compared to the rest, but pretty consistent. The Debt Fund, as I mentioned earlier, we don't need to carry as much fund balance because we have less debt issues to pay, less debt payments. So that is why fund balance has decreased. And then the Food Service Fund continues to increase despite us trying to spend down as much money as possible. A lot of that is due to the pandemic and the fact that the federal government increased reimbursement rates as well as made meals free. So there's projects that continue to spend this money down so that we continue to, I guess, invest in our kitchens and our cafeterias and our equipment and our food service staff as well. But we'll continue to work on different projects to spend this money down. We can increase the quality of food. We've made reduced students free, though that now doesn't have any impact from the state providing all meals for free. So, Barb, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask regarding the food service fund and the requirement from the federal government to pay it down. Is there a deadline in terms of when we have to meet that? Is it
Yeah.
within a calendar year?
There's
School
1 year
calendar
of carryover, so we
Okay.
have, for June 30th of '23, 2 years really from June 30, 2023. You have the option to request a 1-year extension.
Okay. Well, I personally like the idea of looking at better and healthier food options with some of that, some of
Yeah.
that excessive fund balance.
It used to be the food service fund balance basically has to keep like 1/3 of the fund balance of the expenditures for the next year or for the current year. But I think actually that MDE has kind of figured out that most of the school districts, because of the pandemic, that there was a lot of money that was provided by the federal government, so there was access funds that were available, and so it was required actually that to be a finding on your financial statements if your fund balance exceeded. But now MDE has backed up a little bit, and they said actually that it's just like if you have a finding in the prior year, it's just a comment on the financial statement. So if you look at your financial statements of the opinion page, it will be listed in there that your fund balance exceeded. So, but mostly I would see if there are, if you're looking at 100 districts, probably 95 of them actually that have an excess fund balance on their books right now.
I have a question. Have we thought about looking, again, if we're talking about having excess funds and looking at projects, have we looked at looking to try and make our kitchens more cost effective, more efficient, whether we can look at reducing costs from like an electricity standpoint? Are we looking at anything that way? Have we approached it to see, again, if we truly have capital gains, investments that we can we make, again, our buildings more efficient from a kitchen standpoint, which then would offset long-term costs from an efficiency standpoint?
Sure, yeah, there's 2 things that come to mind to answer that question. One is newer equipment, right? So we've been able to replace older aging equipment with newer, more efficient equipment. We've also redone the floors in the kitchen area to make it easier to clean so that we have hopefully less custodial time spent cleaning or sweeping and mopping floors. Makes it easier to clean. So other than that, those are the 2 that come to mind as far as efficiencies in general. I guess one project that the board approved, I think it was last month, was the generators and being able to, due to a power outage, hook up a generator to ensure that the foods in our freezers and refrigerators stay at the temperatures that they're needed. In the past, we would use our maintenance or our ground staff to move that food to a location that had power. So that's, I guess, another efficiency that we're able to keep food in those locations and then just connect a generator to power those. All right, so next in the ACFR is the statistical section that includes some information about financial trends, revenue, debt, demographics, operating. I'm not going to get into that for this presentation, but it is part of that audit report that you guys received, I think, at the last meeting. So before I hand it back to Akshay with some governmental accounting updates, there's a couple major economic considerations that we need to take into account. One is the retirement rate. You'll see that the retirement rate in general is that burgundy line at the top there, going up to 44.88. Fortunately, the state offsets some of these retirement costs. So 28.23 is the net rate. So that's the actual rate that the district pays on district payroll for retirement costs. We don't have any control over these rates. These are set by the Office of Retirement Services. And so for the current year, there was an increase that wasn't completely met or covered by the state. So there will be an increase in that retirement rate when we look at that for next year. One of the pieces causing pressure on those retirement rates is on the next slide, and this is pulled from the Michigan Public School Public School Retirement System. Their comprehensive annual financial report from 2022. The blue line is active members. That's members paying into the retirement system. The orange line is those that are retired that are drawing from the system. So this continues to put pressure on the state as a whole to cover these retirement costs. That there's 225,000 people collecting retirement benefits, and there's 158,000 people paying into the system for those benefits. And Akshay will talk a little bit about that as well, and that liability. But first, he'll jump into GASB statement number 101.
So compensated absences, so we have, basically we just kind of actually look at the, all the loans that we, or the debt the district has. So compensated absence is one of the debt portion that we have on the financial statements. It's based on, you know, the sick pay, the term pay, the severance pay, all included in that, the compensated absences. So it just basically to make sure that if there is any liability that's out there, we have to meet in a year, then we are able to meet that because we've been accumulating that compensated absences from very beginning. So that district would not, if something comes up, the district knows about that liabilities out there for that. That's why we record the compensated absences on the financial statements. Also, like Matt actually looked, if you look at the next slide, the MAPSNS and OPEB bet liability that's on the books. Now, this is only on the government-wide financial statements. It's not on the fund level, so it does not impact anything on the general fund. So, if you look at the bottom numbers, it's the pension liability for the Rochester Community Schools is $382,983,135. Now, if you remember last year, the number actually went down quite a bit. This year, the number went up quite a bit. So last year, the Rochester Community Schools proportionate share was $235 million. This year is $382. So the number is based on September of 2022 numbers. So this is 1 year behind, kind of. So if we looked at 2021, the market was really up in 2021 during COVID. And so since it's based on the market, it's based on the life expectancy. So if the life expectancy goes down, the market goes up. You know, it just makes the market portion is a big number because if you look at the total pension liabilities in billions. So I'm expecting that next year, since it's going to be based on September 30th, 2023, this number is going to keep on going up because the market is still down. So if you look at the proportionate unfunded pension liability was $235 million. The unfunded OPEB liability, other pension benefits, is $21.8 million, which is last year was only $15 million. So I'm expecting this number to go up again next year. Like I said, it does not have any impact on the general fund, but it does make your financial statements on the government-wide financials make a little ugly because the fund balance actually goes negative because of the big liability that's out there. Also, I just want to mention that there were a couple changes. I think there was if you remember GASB 96, the leases, actually the GASB 87, so the leases came into play in last year in 2022, 21-22. This year, actually, there was another one for the GASB change that we had for the recording the technologies, any agreements that we had based on technology to be recorded on the financial statements. So we did look at all the so there is a lot of vague things actually that is on the MDE guidance on those. So when we looked at each and every transactions that out there, or we have a contract with the Rochester Community Schools with any other vendors, we figured out actually that it does not have any material amounts that needs to be recorded as a liability on the books. So what it means is, if you have a contract that is over 1 year old, that is for 5 years, you have to record a liability on the books for the contract period time. But when we looked at all the contracts, we thought actually they were not material enough, so we did not record that on the books, and we passed on that. So again, I don't know if you have any questions on that side. For the leases or for the gas fee.
At what level does it have to be to become material?
It's based on the materiality of the financial statements. Like I said, when we provide it's based on the revenues. The number is determined by the auditors according to the AICPA standards and the GASB standards.
But is it a percent of revenue then, or how is that determined?
It is a percent of revenue. It could be based on revenue or expenditures, but it is mostly based on the revenues. So the materiality number could be, 10% of the total revenues, or it could be 15% of the total revenues, but it's not like a set number. So let's say for example, we come up with the materiality number of 200 grand for the district. So if we say actually that, because we have to take into consideration is, so if we put that on a liability side, now we are expensing on the every year the same amount, correct? So let's say we have $60,000 that we pay every year. So now to record a $500,000 for 5 years, so record a $300,000 entry on the books, then we have to determine that if we amortize it, so if the amortization come up to $40,000 in a year versus what we are paying is $60,000, so we have to put them both together to see what the difference is. So the difference is only $20,000. So that makes it immaterial for the financial statements as a whole. But it is, according to to answer your question, it is a percentage of the revenue. That's how we determine materiality.
So then before we end with questions, we want to say thank you to the Board of Education, Superintendent Silveri, and our cabinet team, the business office who is responsible for a lot of work in preparation for the audits, our human resources team, our building administrators, bookkeepers, our teaching and support staff. They all play a role in the financial health of the district. So thank you, and also thank you. It looks like most people are awake. We didn't scare everybody off yet. And thank you to Akshay and the Lewis and Knopf team. Are there any final questions for Akshay or myself?
Trustee Lekui?
Is it common to have financial controls that allow you to disperse cash without any invoice or purchase order?
Not really, no. It will be if we look at like I said, we don't look at 100% of the transactions. So, but when we look at the transactions, so we do a walkthrough test, and also we do like a testing for the internal controls for the federal funds. So in that type, actually, we look at the invoices when whatever we select or whatever we look at. So if we don't have those, then there will be a management comment and recommendation on it.
Mm-hmm.
But we did see, whatever we selected, we did see the invoice that are out there.
Did you see the invoices that I sent to you
Mm-hmm.
that said disbursement fees? And can you help me understand why that looks the way it does? And is this an example of management override of financial controls? What was going on there?
It's so to answer your management override of controls is kind of on the financial statement side, is kind of when you are that means actually when you are looking at the financial statements and you're changing something in the financial statements without anybody approving it, right? So that's override of controls by a management. So the only way to look at the financial statements override of management controls is, so the software does not allow you to delete any of the stuff that you enter in. The only way to change anything is through a journal entry. So let's say I'm giving an example, like if Matt actually is looking at overall, if he has to change something in an account, he has to make a manual journal entry. He cannot go and delete anything. So what we try to mitigate that override of control is we look at each and every journal entry that happens during the year. Now, look, by having giving your example, if the legal expense that is out there that is not approved by anybody or is not approved by the board, but there is somebody assigned to that. So let's say, for example, superintendent is assigned to to sign, right? So if he can approve, that's not an override of control, because that is a control that the superintendent can sign it because he's authorized to look at. But yes, now there is a client lawyer privileges that are out there. So when we look at any of the attorney bills that come to us, the main thing that we have to look for is if there is any contingent liability out there that has to be recorded in the financial statements. So the only two things that we mostly look at is if there is a pending litigation, if there is a threat of litigation, because I mean, you have seen those bills too. So those bills actually don't provide much documentation on the bills. And the only person that knows is the person who they talk to, or the superintendent, or to the board. So, and then if we have to look at the contingent liability to make sure actually that something has to be recorded in the books. So we do ask the questions during our SAS 114 meeting with the board. And also, we send out letters to the attorneys to make sure there is no pending litigation.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is what is the standard for approving invoices? So you're talking about pending or threat of litigation. If there is no pending or threat of litigation, and we're paying one company through a law firm, and I'm just trying to.
There could be, I don't see, mostly I see in the contract side of things. Like, for example, if you have a general contractor that probably pays bills for other contractors, but I haven't seen that much that attorney bills are paid through, any other vendors are paid through attorney.
Right.
But there is a possibility if there is any legal issue in the matter actually of what they're providing, then attorneys might be involved in it and they are paid through the attorneys, I guess.
I would expect that both would be paid directly, because otherwise it seems like it would be too easy to just hide activity by basically funneling funds through a law firm, and then the activity wouldn't show up on invoices and nobody would have to know what was going on, and who knows what that activity could look like, which is why it would make sense for that to, I mean, that's why I would wonder if that would be considered a management override of financial controls in a sense, because, I mean, think about a hypothetical example. Let's say you had some kind of bribery or kickbacks going on.
So collusion.
You could get away with something like that using that method, which we've seen in other school districts, unfortunately.
So I got my question a little bit more to the process. So you just described it. You said the invoice comes in, the person approves it, right? And so you said they look for litigation or whatever. But the person approving it would have to know what was paid for. If they don't know what's being paid for, they shouldn't approve it.
Correct.
So again, using the example that was provided to you, approving something with having no record of what you're approving or being able to justify what you're approving would say there's an issue in the process.
That is true, because I think actually if there is something that needs to be approved, and
you got to know what you're approving.
Yeah, so we usually recommend actually is that the board should be also involved in. That's why you're appointed, right? So that's why you're there.
To provide proper oversight, you're right.
Yeah, so if there is some questions, so somebody else would know, so that no one one person that actually will be responsible for everything.
And I just want to make sure for our community, they can understand, you're saying also, too, your audit wasn't really designed to catch something like this. What you guys look at, that's not really the intent, to find out if potentially our processes are broken to the point that people are approving things that they don't know what they're approving. That's not the intent of your audit.
No, it is actually, so
Well,
basically.
then you were given examples of it specifically and then they decided not to cite them.
Well, so what you're saying is because when we look at, but we are not looking at the operating effectiveness of the internal controls, but we are actually looking for that are the controls being followed properly? Are the policies and procedures
Right.
of the
So
district?
in this case, you're saying you're looking just for the approval. You don't
Yes,
really
correct.
care whether they knew what they were approving
Correct,
or not.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Were there any other questions? Okay. I think, so then, Mr. McDaniel, the board needs to accept the audit as presented. Is that,
Yes, please.
all right, so is there a motion to accept the audit as presented? Moved by trustee Gupta. Is there support? Trustee Blake? Sorry, I probably should have started out with that. I have two public comments here. Mrs. Manhire?
Sit up front, less farther to walk. Good evening, everybody. I'm Michelle Manhire, 3 kids in the district. I'm here to request a full forensic audit for the district to undertake. Too many instances have occurred and not been fully resolved to the satisfaction of rational adults throughout the district. I implore this board to take the necessary steps to undertake such an audit. Please remember that the educated and wise parents in this district know the truth does not mind being questioned. Lies do. Again, I implore you to do a full forensic audit of this district. Thank you.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Baldick, did you wish to speak again?
Early in my career, I used to do audit work. It was more of a forensic nature. And you're either following the money or you're looking that you receive the goods and services that you paid for. And I was trying to follow Mr. Kapoor's logic here, and my hearing's not that good, so forgive me if I miss something. But the situation you have here, if you have a month's worth of invoices, okay, you go flipping through them, anytime you see the word cash, well, that's kind of a red flag. You take that and you put that aside. Okay, then you flip through, and you're all done. You got that. Now you have a stack, okay, but they're not invoices. It's a stack of cash disbursements, okay? That's not a red flag anymore. That's like flashing red lights and air raid sirens, okay? You got to go find the money, or you have to go find the goods and services. And in this case, you got the money went to the law firm. It's supposed to go to the PR firm, but you have no evidence of that. You have nothing to show that they were ever paid. And then the other thing, it says, well, what are the goods and services? You have no receipt of that. You have nothing. That's a problem.
Thank you. All right, so at this point, I have the motion to accept the audit as presented. I'm sorry. Sure, trustee Blake.
Mrs. Manhire, who spoke there, who asked for a forensic audit, which I think different people use different definitions, but what would the cost for something like that be for our district?
I don't do forensic account auditing, but it depends upon actually because the forensic audit could be based on for the full financial statements, or it could be based on a particular. So if you're just thinking about legal expenses, you know, it could be based on legal expenses only, looking at each one of those legal expenses. So to do that part, you know, the portion of it, it would be fairly straightforward, cheaper. But if you're doing the full financial audit, looking at, because they're going to look at each and every transaction, that probably will be costing a lot of money. I mean, I'm probably thinking it's probably gonna be more than 100 grand.
Brief statement, just for frame of reference, last year in 2022, we paid $152,000 to Bassett and Bassett. In 2020, we paid $235,000 to them. In 2019, we paid $267,000 just to Bassett and Bassett. That's not any of the law firms. So the fact that we've cut their cost, in net savings, we could do the forensic audit and still be cheaper than what we used to pay Bassett and Bassett.
All right. All of those in favor of accepting the audit as presented, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And I would just ask, why are you not approving the audit?
I brought to Mr. Kapoor's attention my concerns with those invoices, and it wasn't reflected in the audit anywhere. And I'm afraid it gives people a misleading idea that, oh, well, we had a financial audit, everything is okay, we don't need a forensic audit, everything is great. I am of the belief that we do have investigation that we ought to be doing and that it's not being covered. I think perhaps the scope of this audit was simply too narrow to focus on my concerns.
Right,
But
but
it gives people a false sense of security, and so that's why I believe we need more than what we just had done.
All right. Well, the motion passes 4-2, and the audit is accepted. We are now moving on to agenda item 7.2, which is the approval of 3 bid awards. One for the common areas at Rochester High School and Adams High School, the second for heat pumps at Stony Creek High School, and the third for the replacement of the roof and air handling units and minor warehouse renovations at the admin building. Mr. McDaniel, did you need me to have put the motion on the floor first, or wait till after you've done the presentation?
Yeah, I think I can make some comments on each of those projects, and then we also have, I think he's over there somewhere, Mr. Pete Musio.
Thank you.
Briefly, I'll try to go through these 3 requests. The first is for a space for seniors to eat lunch at Rochester Adams and Rochester High School. The work really includes removing lockers, as well as demo of existing power and providing electrical outlets. Similar renovations have already been completed at Stony Creek High School as part of their flooring renovations. Actually, you saw, or were able to see some of that work at the reception for the merit finalists. So on October 10th, 2023, the district advertised an RFP for this project in the local publication, the Rochester Post, as well as posted RFP documents on the purchasing page of the district's website, Sigma, and BidNet Direct. We received 14 responses for 5 categories of construction trade on the due date. These responses were evaluated by the district's Director of Capital Projects, as well as a team from Frank Rewald & Son. All the accepted bids were found to be initially compliant with required specifications per the detail in the bid summary. Bids were analyzed on content, completeness, inclusion of required submittals, and compliance with required specifications. Interviews and evaluations were conducted according to the attached documentation. This will be funded through the 2015 bond fund. And based on this information, we recommend the following awards. Category A, selective demolition to DKI International Incorporated in the amount of $39,000. Category B, carpentry to Huron Acoustic Tile Company Incorporated, $72,800. Category C, resilient flooring to Capital Flooring Incorporated, $66,000. Category D, painting to RNC Paint Systems, $4,050. Category E, electrical to RH Electrical Services Incorporated, $25,350. For a contract sum of $207,200. We recommend that the board also approve the allowances and construction management fees as detailed in the attached analysis for a total amount of $106,459, making the grand total for this project $313,659. The second recommendation tonight is for the Stony Creek High School heat pump project. This project is to replace 139 heat pumps that supply the heating and cooling for a large portion of Stony Creek High School. The heat pumps are original to the building and require replacement. Repair parts are no longer available to make repairs to these units. On October 5th, the district advertised an RFP in the aforementioned publications. We received 5 responses for 2 categories of construction trade. They were reviewed by the same team from Frank Rewald & Son and the district's Director of Capital Projects, and they were found to be initially compliant with all the required specifications. Interviews and evaluations were also conducted according to the attached documentation. This project will be funded through the sinking fund. And we recommend the following contracts. Category A, mechanical to Macomb Mechanical Incorporated, $1,237,202. Category B, electrical, will be rebid. Also, we have early equipment purchases to Advantage Electric and Controls, $19,825. We have an owner consultant commissioning to JMK Engineering Incorporated, $58,000. Also, another owner consultant testing and balancing to Enviro Air Incorporated, $74,000. For a contract sum of $1,389,027. And we recommend that the Board of Education approve the allowances and construction management fees as detailed in a total of $436,597 for a total current project costs for this project in the amount of $1,825,624. Our third and final project tonight is for the admin or administration building RTU replacement. The scope of this project is to replace the 7 rooftop air handling units to provide HVAC to the 3-story office portion of the administration building. The existing units are original to the building and are 27 years old and past their useful life. The typical life expectancy for rooftop air handling units is roughly 15 years, according to ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers. The existing air handling units have several parts that are failing due to age, and repair parts are hard to come by. They're no longer available. In addition, the refrigerant that the units use is being phased out and is not readily available to purchase. Furthermore, only a portion of the existing units are connected to a local building automation system, which is also outdated. New building automation or BAS controls will be provided to match the district standard and provide remote monitoring and control. At this same time, the roof is original to the building as well and needs replacement due to deficiencies, which was documented in the district's roofing condition assessment completed in April 2022 by the district's roofing consultant, Structure Tech. Useful life of ballasted membrane roof is 15 to 25 years, and the current roof is 27 years old. In addition to the condition of the existing roof, several areas of the roof will need to be removed in order to install the structural steel that is being provided to support the new air handling units. The new roof system will be a fully adhered rubber membrane roof that is more effective and longer lasting than the current ballasted membrane roof, has a 20 to 30 year lifespan. Scope of this project also includes minor renovations, to 3 rooms in the warehouse area to provide space for technology's receiving area, secured storage, as well as space for the technicians to work. On October 12th, the district advertised an RFP for this project in the Rochester Post, as well as posted the documents on the purchasing pages of the district's website, Sigma, and BidNet Direct. District received 21 responses for 7 categories of construction trade. These bids were also reviewed by Frank Rewell & Son and the district's director of capital projects. All of the accepted bids were found to be initially compliant and were analyzed on bid content, completeness, required submittals, and compliance with required specifications. The source of funding for this project is a sinking fund. Based on this information, we recommend the following contracts. Category A, selective demolition to Reese Contracting Incorporated, $57,300. Category B, structural steel and miscellaneous metals to Suburban Fabrication, $147,705. Category C, carpentry to City Renovation and Trim Incorporated, $46,000. Category D, membrane roofing to Newton Crane Roofing Incorporated, $231,300. Category E, painting to RNC Paint Systems, $7,500. Category F, mechanical to Macomb Mechanical Incorporated, $965,392. Category G, electrical to Advance Contracting and Electrical Services, $36,600. An owner-held consultant commissioning contract to JMK Engineering Incorporated, $24,000. Owner consultant testing and balancing contract to Enviro Air Incorporated, $21,000. Total contract sum, $1,536,797. In addition, we recommend that the board approve the allowances and construction management fees attached in the analysis, totaling $376,614 for a total cost of this project, $1,913,411. Thank you.
All right. Trustee Weaver.
So my question is about the last one we just talked about. Were these expenses known before we purchased the building?
Mr. Musio can call you up, but yes, to some degree, we knew that the building would eventually need a new roof as well as new HVAC units.
So was that factored into the budget that was presented in front to the community at the time of what renovations were going to be needed and things of that nature? Was this a part of that budget at that time?
I don't believe so. Pete, do you know any different?
I think the thought was they wanted to preserve as much money for the bond for students and not the administration building. So the thought, I think, was to either, delay the replacement to the sinking fund and use those dollars from the sinking fund and taking it instead of taking from the bond fund.
We don't think it would have been relevant to tell the community up front that it needs a new roof and it's going to be roughly almost $2 million more dollars?
Well, we didn't know until we moved in, and things leaking, and then our maintenance guys have been responding
Well,
to service
I'm not,
calls.
it wasn't a gotcha. My first question was, did we know this work needed to be done before
No,
we bought the building?
not
And that
totally.
answer was yes. So now it's no.
No,
I'm
I mean,
trying to
just by
understand.
the sheer age, probably they would need to be replaced.
So then there was some expectation that we would be replacing the roof. We would have had some estimate what that would have cost. Why should it have not been factored in when we presented that to the community?
There's
in
an
purchasing?
expectation with any building that there's going to be continued maintenance costs, right? We have, I don't know, Pete, do you know the number? We have millions of dollars of HVAC needs that we anticipate over the next 5 to 10 years of replacing.
Sure, but when we go into a project in purchasing a building, we should have an expectation of what it costs. We should be able to foresee what it costs.
So
And
how
again, it's
far
been
out?
very clear that we are way over what has been presented. So with this, what will this put us all in total on this new admin building if this is approved?
I guess before you answer that, I'm just curious, how far out do you go?
The building was
how
just
far-
bought.
No.
You're
I
acting
mean,
like the building was bought
how-
a decade ago.
What was the, what year did we buy this in? How old is?
22.
Was it 22?
21.
21.
So I'm just curious,
We
I mean,
moved in
how
last
far
summer.
out do you
Most
predict?
companies, I think, operate in a 5-year plan window. It is minimum.
Okay,
I
so
think it's a
you're,
realistic expectation. If you're brand, and especially on real estate, I think more would expect that you are looking out farther than that, and you can have at least have a realistic expectation of what your cost would be. Again, that's what I'm trying to understand is when we make purchases like this, what are we forecasting? What are we doing? And to that point, I'm just now looking for, with this now another $2 million into an admin building that does not service students, when the old one did, what are we all in for this building if this is approved?
I would have to pull that number up. I can add the 1.9 million to it, or 1.8.
1.9 to 12.3. Which is still less than to renovate the old administration building.
Well, it's way less now. They're throwing out numbers like 50 million, but when those are all fabricated numbers.
Well, it was 20-some million before, so back in 2019 before.
Do we foresee,
COVID.
what other ones do we foresee coming? Do we have other ones that we're foreseeing coming?
For
Renovations for this building? Are there other ones out there that we kind of know are coming?
Yeah,
Sure. Again, we're saying we knew this one was
There's
coming.
additional air handlers on the roof that'll eventually have to be replaced. The roof on the warehouse will eventually have to be replaced.
Yeah, we have items that need to be replaced across the entire district. One other piece that the board would have, I guess, direction or approval on would be if we wanted to move the Harrison room to the administration building. That was an item that's been discussed previously, but that would be up to the board on that one.
But we evaluate year by year, we evaluate what the priorities are in the district for infrastructure repairs.
Sure, and we were told the priority was we let the old admin building deteriorate because we prioritize students, but now it appears we're prioritizing the new admin building and not students. I'm just trying to figure when the priority switched.
Trustee Annis.
For a point of clarification, the old admin building housed some students because district-wide, we did not have the space available. We passed a bond that increased the capacity for students that were in the admin building to go out into the district, which has always been the goal, to never have the admin building be a space that was supposed to house students for student functions.
Does anyone have additional questions on the admin building?
Madam President?
Trustee LaCouey.
Yeah, I was going to echo some similar concerns that Trustee Weaver brought up, because we've been in this building for less than a year, And if we knew this when we bought the building, I'm just wondering why we didn't include it in the remodeling cost then. I think the last time we got an update about how much we've spent on the admin building, it was something like 13.1 million. So then if this is 1.9 million, it'll probably go over 2 million by the time we're done with it, because that's usually how projects like this work. Then we're at like 15 million. And the unfortunate thing is just that it would have been nice to know up front what the cost of this building was going to be for the first few years, because we were told it was 7 million, I think, at first, and then there was 3 million of remodeling that we knew about, but then it just keeps going up. So if there are other projects that we have that are upcoming, I would really like to have a list of what is upcoming. I think I asked this back in October when we did our walkthrough of the old admin building, and I asked about new admin building projects, and could you please send us the list of the upcoming projects? So I would still like to see that, just so that we know, in terms of foresight and future planning, what costs are up and coming soon.
Trustee Ennis, okay, any other questions on this? I was just curious, Matt, I don't know if this is you or Mr. Musio, what amount of the admin building bid is the warehouse work versus the roof and HVAC?
It was a bid separately, but it's about maybe $25,000 at the most.
Okay, for the warehouse.
It's very small. It's putting a couple doors in, a couple countertops in for technology technicians to work from, and securing their space.
Okay. All right, so let's move then. Does anyone have questions on the Stony Creek High School heat pumps? Okay, and then the common areas for Rochester High School and Adams High School? I had a couple on this. I was just curious, are they removing the lockers or moving them?
Removing.
And then, how is that going to impact students? I mean, I can just remember from a couple years ago with Adams, incoming freshmen had to share lockers, and so what does that do?
Yeah, we've worked with all three building administrators, and if you walk through the hallways during school, every kid has a backpack. They don't use lockers anymore, but in talking to them, they said they have plenty of lockers once we removed these. These were just the ones that were reserved for the seniors.
Okay, and then can the extra cafeteria fund be used for this instead of the bond fund?
The food service fund could be a prorated portion, though we have a deadline to spend the bond funds of, roughly April is the kind of the drop dead have to be spent deadline. So that's why we chose the bond fund for this project.
All right. And, I guess I did have one question on the Stony Creek High School. That was the one, I think, that had the electric that needs to be rebid. Is that correct?
The heat pumps?
The heat pumps?
Correct, yes, yeah.
And so is that included as a contingency in
No.
there? No, so that'll be in a different, additional amount?
Yeah, we'll have to come back. yeah.
Coming up? Okay. And it makes sense we need to move forward with the rest of it because we need to start?
We had to start ordering the equipment, yeah, to get it here, yeah.
Okay.
That's why we ordered the one panel, the one electrical panel that was ordered as part of the bid award.
I have another question. Do we have an actual overall plan that we can look at that shows us, again, in the world I come from, we call it a method action plan, that shows us basically the long-term plan from a building cost? I mean, again, we're just notified of a failure that flooded a building. Obviously, there's the long metal that was around. Do we have a document that shows us over the next 5 years what the plan is, what we're assigning expenses, and if that document made available to us? Because again, I do feel like these awards come up and they feel like they're very much just kind of spots. And again, I think that's just because we haven't seen the plan. So if that plan exists, I would love to see it.
Yeah, we have that plan, but I can tell you it changes from year to year based on priorities change from year to year. But yeah, from the most part, we work from this one document and then we reevaluate it every year of what projects need priorities. Because sometimes we think a piece of equipment's gonna last a little bit longer based on the feedback I get from my maintenance guys, and then all of a sudden it doesn't. So, or we find out we have issues with infrastructure problems that we didn't have before, so, but yeah. Yep. We have it by year, by school.
All right. Okay. So at this point then, I have Mrs. Manhire wanting to make a public comment.
Hello, me again, Michelle Manhire, 3 kids in the district. I want to ask if RFQs have gone out for services required for any number of school buildings servicing our teachers and students which are needed. Currently, these bid awards for the admin building alone are shown at $1,536,797. That's we'll call it 1.5 to be generous, $1 million on top of all that's already been spent on this building. This takes quite a bit of chutzpah to propose this kind of work to be undertaken with district money in lieu of buildings which actually house our kids and the teachers they rely upon. I have to tell you, the optics here are not good. I ask that you either show concrete actions being taken immediately, as in next month we start approving bid awards for, say, Long Meadow's whole new roofing system, because that we already know is an issue. Again, it's priorities. If there's one thing I heard through multiple sessions of the strategic plan meetings with all the parents was priorities. I really have to tell you, $1.5 million on this building that already has a really poor taste in a lot of people's mouths about how this district spent our kids' monies. That is not smart. That is not wise. I think very soon we should see buildings, elementaries, middle schools, high schools, that are being prioritized and getting stuff cleared up that have been lingering for years. I ask you to regroup your priorities. Thank you.
All right, at this point, we have a motion to approve the bid awards as presented. Who would like to make that motion? Moved by trustee Annis, support by trustee Gupta. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain.
402. All right. We're now moving to agenda item 7.3, which is the approval of the non-homestead millage renewal. The non-homestead millage is part of the basic school funding system in Michigan. Primary homeowners do not pay this millage. Renewal of this millage allows the district to continue to receive the full per-pupil foundation allowance. Mr. Silveri, I believe that you're going to take us through this?
Yes, thank you. So all districts have to levy 18 mills on non-homestead property if we're going to receive our full foundation allowance. You know that the bulk of our revenues are based on foundation allowance per pupil. But to get that full foundation allowance, every district has to do this. So, and it has to be approved by the public. Ours is slated to expire with the 2024 levy. So we can levy in 2024, but we need renewed authority to levy past that. So this provides, just to put a dollar amount to it, $23.2 million, or 10.8% of our district's general fund. This is used for all regular expenses, that's staffing, curriculum, materials, instructional supplies, transportation, you name it. When it was last voted on in 2014, voters approved this at 10 years at 19.9307 mils. This has been eroded by the Headley Amendment, which is tied to property values, and as property values spike, there's Headley erosion. So that has diminished over time and now stands at 18.5004 mils currently. So to go back out to our community and request that they approve another Headley amendment, or Headley override, we have 4 opportunities to do so in 2024, 4 election opportunities. One is on February 27th. That's in association with the presidential primary that's upcoming that was just recently established. Also May 7th. There is no other election, so we would bear the full cost if we went out on May 7th. August Business and Operations Committee. And what we're recommending is that we ask our constituents to vote on this on February 27th in association with the presidential primary. We're asking that we go out for 5 years at a renewal of just one ballot initiative, a renewal of the 18.5004 mils, along with an increase of the 0.5 mils. So what's really important to know here at that 18.5 and even the increase in the 0.5, at no time ever are we able to, even if we wanted to, levy more than the 18 mils. That's all it's ever levied is just the 18 mils. The increase that we're requesting is intended to protect against further headly erosion based on the rate that that's eroded over the last 10 years. If we ask for this 0.5 increase for the next 5, that should cover any erosion so that we would get through the 5 years and we wouldn't fall below 18. So again, throughout these next 5 years, if this were to pass, we would continue to levy 18 mils, which is exactly what we've been levying all along. The only reason we might have a problem going forward is if the attrition, the erosion took that down below 18 mils, we would not be able to levy the full 18 mils, and it means that we would lose revenues for the district. Another really key fact to know is this applies only to commercial and industrial properties, second homes, and rental properties. I'm going to say that again. It applies only to commercial and industrial properties, second homes, and rental properties. It is not levied on primary residences, homes in which homeowners live. So I'm going to use myself as an example. I live in Rochester. That's the only home I own. My taxes are not impacted in any way, shape, or form by this. If the millage were not to pass, our per pupil revenue would fall from the current $9,608 per student down to $8,060. And again, the total impact would be in the ballpark of $23 million. So we are asking for the board to approve this. This would be on the ballot on February 27th then, along with the presidential primary. There would be some cost to the district. What we're told is ballpark of $15,000 for this. If we were to go in May, though, for example, looks like the cost from what we're told from the city would be over $100,000. So it would certainly behoove us to kind of tag along with an existing election. And at this point, as we looked at that, we thought that maybe the best two options were February 27th and August 6th. But rather than wait that long and get that close to the time that it's going to expire, we believe it's a pretty simple and straightforward proposal that we'll be able to communicate effectively. And we're asking the board to approve putting this on the ballot for February 27th, going back out for 5 more years, renewal of the 18.5004 mils and an increase of 0.5 mils. Do you have any questions about that?
Trustee Weaver?
Is the cost in August the same as it is for February?
Yes, roughly. We don't have an exact amount,
Sure,
but
but the
ballpark,
estimate
yes.
is about the same?
Yes, it is.
I would say, I would strongly suggest we look at making it August. Again, people can continue to want to ignore the financial questions our community has, but I think to push this and put it to a vote in February is asking a lot of the community. By doing it in August, gives our board and the district some time to show and rebuild trust that we are financially responsible. So again, I think it's a sign of good faith to the community to make it August. You still have the second bite at the apple if it fails. But I think to go and just say do it in February and try to push it, I think right now you have a lot of sour, taste in people's mouth. And to ignore that reality, I think it would put us at risk. So I think it would make more sense to do it in August if it's the same cost. You still have the second bite of the apple and it gives us time.
Trustee Blake?
I would want one of those that costs us nothing or costs us the least, obviously. The thing about August is people are on vacation. They're out of town. They're doing all kinds of things, and I think we would get less participation from the community than we would in February.
Trustee Lakouey?
Okay. And just to make sure I'm understanding exactly what it is, this is basically a business tax or tax on second homes and rental properties.
Yes.
And it's with 18 mils, but we're also asking for an increase in 0.5 for 5 years.
Yes,
right? And then it will be reviewed again, I guess, in 5 years?
correct.
Okay, so that's the length. Thanks.
I just had a question. Can you only go for 5 years, or could you do 10 years?
We could go longer if we desired to. We could go 10. If we were to go 10 years at this point, we'd have to ask for a larger increase to protect against, over that length of time, even more erosion due to Headley. So if we were to extend it, we'd also have to bump out, you know, I would hate just to guess sitting at the board table, but roughly at least up to another full mill rather than the 0.5.
And I'm assuming, like, when I went out and looked, most of them looked like they were 5 years, so is that normally what people or districts do?
I wouldn't say that. I'd say it's a mix. Most districts go for 5 or 10 in my experience. I'm not sure if a majority goes more so for one or the other. I'm not certain about that.
Are there any other questions? Okay, so is there a motion to approve the non-homestead millage resolution authorizing that the non-homestead millage renewal be included on the February 27th, 2024 ballot as presented? Moved by trustee Annis. Is there support by trustee Blake? Is there any other discussion on this? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
And I apologize, Mrs. Lakui, were you an aye? That's a 5-1 vote. So that resolution is approved. Do we need a break at this time? We've got. Okay, all right. So agenda item 7.4 is the approval of the MSB superintendent evaluation tool to be used for the interim superintendent's evaluation during this school year. During our October work session, the board agreed to move forward using the MASB superintendent evaluation tool. There was a desire to vote on this, so we're doing that now. Is there a motion to use the MASB superintendent evaluation tool for the interim superintendent's evaluation during this school year? Moved by trustee Annis, support by trustee Blake. Any discussion on this? Okay, all of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's a 6-0 vote. So we've approved the tool. I am looking to see, it looked like all trustees could make a training on December 18th. I'm still waiting for confirmation on that from both the district side and MASB. So as soon as I hear more, I will let you and the community know. Okay. All right, agenda item 8 is public comment. This agenda item provides an opportunity for board members to hear from community members. If you have not completed a yellow card, please do so at this time and hand it to our SAFET officer in the yellow shirt. When addressing the board, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please address your comments to the entire board and not to individual board members, school district employees, or members of the audience. All right, and at this time, I have 2 cards currently. Mrs. Manhire? She's not here, okay. And then Ms. Lamb, Lisa Lamb?
Good evening, Board of Education and Administration. I have listened to so many of your meetings over the past couple of years, and I wanted the opportunity to speak in front of you, and mostly because I speak from my heart, and I want to share that I am a classroom teacher at Hamlin Elementary, and I've had the privilege of being a member of that school community for nearly 30 years. I started there as a student teacher and never left. And I'm very proud to be a Hamlin Hawk. I'm very proud, I'm still very proud to be an educator in this district. But it bothers me week after week or every so often when I do tune into a Board of Education meeting to see a community that is so divided and at times very ugly, because our children must come first. They have always come first for me. That's a lot of children in my heart, and I hold them close. And our teachers must be a close second to those children. The classroom teachers are the heart of this community. And as I get ready to exit from this profession, it's my calling. As I get ready to exit, I want the teachers that I get to stand with and work beside, I want them to stay because it's a wonderful place to be. A teacher in Rochester schools. I once heard somebody say to me that when he came to Rochester schools, it was like coming to the New York Yankees. And it's always resonated with me. He was so proud. And I was so proud to tell him that I have been here and will stay here until I finish my career, my calling. Please support our teachers as we enter negotiations. Prioritize the people, the children and the people who do the important work with children every single day. And our beloved paraprofessionals who stand beside the teachers and next to teachers and children. Make us a priority. Keep our newest teachers invested in this great district. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 9.1 is additional comments by members of the Board of Education. Individual board members may use this time to share information about school visits, updates from committees or organizations they're assigned to, or express their personal opinion. Trustee Blake, did you have anything at this time?
I did. First of all, I wanted to, before I get into those other issues, I did want to clarify one thing because I just don't want to be misquoted or mischaracterized. I have never said, and I didn't say tonight, that I have no problem or I think everything is fine with this Bassett and Bassett situation. I think I've actually expressed that I do have some problems with it. I have, first of all, let's start with the underlying conduct. I don't think that's what we want our superintendent to be doing, those types of things. And I think going forward, we're not going to be having those same type of activities. But at the same time, I keep, on the one hand and on the other, we're not talking about bribery. We hear fraud. We're not talking about kickbacks. I've not heard anything that relates to any of that. So let's keep in context what we're talking about. And I've said this, and I want to say it again, that I'm not happy about the process that got us to this 100 days or whatever down the road. The lawyer part of me looks at this memorandum, and it says that Mr. Silveri spoke to these different people, including 3 of our own employees, our own administrators, and then this is what he learned down below. But it doesn't say, this person told me this and this person told me that. So it is my hope that none of these administrators knew this information and allowed this to go on for 100 days. I hope that's not the case, because that would be problematic. But I don't throw out accusations against people when I don't know them to be true. So I would never do that. But I hope that's not the case. As for back to what we're here for, the district and the people, I did a few things the last couple of weeks. I did attend 2 of the plays with a number of my colleagues. Both of them, this is the first time I've ever been to a play in the district, and the quality was really through the roof. 2 very different types of plays. The one at Adams, I think it's the play that is all wrong, or I might get the words wrong, but and then the Mean Girls, and both of them were really, really good. And I was there for the final night, as we were, of the director who had directed 40 years in a row. He had directed, and it was his final thing. And the ones that were there saw, but his students, his wife, and so forth gave him flowers and thanked him. And it's hard for me to imagine being anywhere for 40 years and doing that many, how many kids went through that program and, had those special times. So that was really nice. I did attend as the board representative on the PTA council meeting and met people from PTAs at every corner of the district and learned a lot that day. I also, as 6 of us did, attended the night of the community forum. And mostly we didn't do much that night. Actually, Mr. Weaver and I were assigned together to do the name tag stand, and we did a bang-up job, and no blood was spilled, so it was a good night. But what really made me optimistic about that night is that even though there weren't as many people as I had hoped for, there were people that I knew that came in, and I knew that had different viewpoints that were sometimes disparate viewpoints, and they were all put in one big group to talk. And I thought, oh God, I wonder how this is going to go. And we were not allowed to hear what they were saying, so we stayed far away. And I heard laughter, and as they were walking out, I saw people, in good moods, and I saw people, and every person that I know that was there gave good feedback, and they said, we might be, we might be different, but we agree on so much. And that made me optimistic that if you put people in one place and you let them see each other and talk with each other and see each other's humanity, there's so much that we all want, everybody. And so I just choose to focus on those positive things, and that made me optimistic that we're on the right track with this focus group project and that we're heading in the right direction.
Trustee Weaver?
So I'm sorry, I'm not sure she left, but I'm biased to Miss Lamb. She was my oldest son's second grade teacher. So again, I absolutely loved everything that she said, and I agree with almost everything that she said. So the part is that we've got to do the hard work to actually make that happen, and we have to start actually doing things to make that happen. We can't just keep saying we're going to make them happen. And so I want to address an email that I sent to the full board where recently there was an article in the New York Times that addressed the practices that really is approached under what we deem SEL. Social emotional learning, which kind of like DEI, when we ask what's the tangible benefit or what do we do with it, nobody can tell us. It's just, hey, it feels good. And the idea behind it was specifically, there's now studies showing the idea, especially coming out of the pandemic, that we're actually increasing mental health issues. We are making them worse. And again, these are studies, and this is in the New York Times. It's not some far right-wing conspiracy. You're right, that cites a study, an actual study in it. You're right, one study. But again, as we've seen,
Trustee Weaver to
so
speak.
this is the point, and exactly what you're seeing. So when you provide sources and data, it just becomes a way to diffuse the conversation because it might actually be true, and that challenges people's ideology or what they believe. And so we can't have those conversations. But there's been studies and research out there since 2015, 2018. Coddling the American Mind is a great source to start with, where they talk about the idea of certain things are weakening the mental strength of our students. But again, we can't have these conversations. So instead of doing that and understanding, and I simply ask questions like, we're starting to make smart metrics. So I ask for data so we can come up with real smart metrics that we can start shifting to make sure we are supporting our teachers. We are having tangible benefits. We're not going from a learning process. With literacy is a great example. What everyone is starting to see around literacy, because we're starting to pay attention, and many of us parents that really defaulted to truth and did trust our teachers and still trust our teachers, and when we found out that we weren't really doing it the right way, and one of the biggest takeaways from Sold a Story, and that's where I learned from it, was that many teachers didn't know because they were told from colleges, they were told from boards, they were told from superintendents, from respected entities that this is just the way to do it. And so that was one of the big takeaways. So instead of, again, being able to look back and say, what did the data say? What does the science say? And here we sit. So again, and you just heard it with our board, you send them a source, one that they should actually support based on where they fall politically, and they still just want to dismiss it to say we can't talk about it. We're talking about our students' mental health. And instead of being open to seeing it and saying, oh, there has been this stuff around since 2015, 2018, maybe we should consider it and have that open dialogue, it just gets dismissed. And it comes back to exactly what we talked about during the pandemic. The federal lawsuit all stemmed around parents advocating for their students' mental health and the concerns they had with their mental health that, again, have been verified. Closing the schools was wrong. It did more harm. It hurt our students. And yet, a parent got their employer called. And here we are, exactly what appointee Blake wants to point out, is the district just shifted from having employees do it to paying Bassett and Bassett do it and funneling the money through Collins and Blaha. Like, why? And instead, no one threw out accusations. We've simply asked questions. Tell us what it was. Don't have us assume. But when people will not answer basic questions that they should be able to answer, they cause a suspicion. So everyone's got to start being responsible for their actions. We are, as elected officials, supposed to ask hard questions about the financials because we're supposed to provide oversight. Yes, the ORC audit shows this board has failed to do that. And so it's new that that's happening and it's making people uncomfortable. But as everyone says, these critical conversations, these hard conversations, to do the work to support our teachers and our students and make sure we rebuild trust with the community, everyone's going to be uncomfortable a little bit. So again, if people can't answer basic questions, that's a problem with who can't answer the question, not who's asking the question.
Trustee Lakui?
Well, there are so many wonderful things going on in our district, and for that, I am very thankful. We have hardworking administrators and teachers and paraeducators and secretaries and staff who work hard to make sure that RCS is an environment that supports students and helps them to learn and grow and prepare for life after K-12. I want to make sure that our upper leadership is doing everything we can to help these invaluable staff members and to facilitate a great connection with our community and parents. And that's why, as a board member, I'm trying to pay attention to how we're spending our resources. Are we buying the best curriculum we can afford so that we can help the most kids possible learn how to read and give teachers tools that work, tools that don't contradict each other, and tools that are evidence-based? Do we know where all of our money is going? Are the financial controls robust and effective? The financial audit that we had today doesn't actually express an opinion on the effectiveness of our controls. And I understand this is a required audit, so it was doing what it was supposed to do. But if we're going to pay for an audit, we need to make sure that the audit is not too narrow in scope to address the problems. It has to target whatever problem we're trying to address to give us the reassurance that we're looking for. Transparency in a public school district is very important. Without transparency, you can have no accountability because you can't see what's going on. And without accountability, you can pretty much be assured that behavior is going to continue. That's just the reality. If we see that wrongdoing has occurred and there are no consequences, it will keep happening. And we're going to have to keep engaging in some of this negativity that nobody likes. If anybody thinks that I like being on this board and having to point out problems, you're not correct. I do not like having to do that. It's extremely uncomfortable. But we were elected to provide oversight, and oversight is important. And if I bring up an example saying something like, well, when I see activity like this, you could commit a certain problem, doing something like this. It doesn't mean I'm saying that we are definitely doing that. I'm just saying the possibility exists, and because of that, we should be concerned. It's a major red flag when you see that we've been paying cash and that there's no written documentation. If we've been told that, you know, we were helping, that these entities, the law firm and the PR firm that we normally would pay directly, that they've been helping us on these projects, and we can't see evidence of those projects, and we can't see any descriptions on the invoices, we don't even really know that that work was occurring. I'm not saying I don't believe the work was occurring, it very well could be, but I'm saying there's a problem. So if you want these problems to go away, it means we have to address the real problems. We have to resolve what problems might exist. We need to make sure that we're not spending money frivolously, that we're not wasting money, that we know where the money is going so that we can direct the money where it needs to go. We've got teacher negotiations coming up. I want to be able to put as much money as possible in the classroom with students, with teachers, where it needs to go, because I agree that they are the heart of the district. And we have to do what we can to support them, and we can't if money is floating around elsewhere and is unaccounted for. Trustee Gupta?
So just a few comments that I'd like to share, and then a mini report of some things I've been doing lately related to the board. One thing I want to say is, you know, when a colleague shares an article from anywhere, I always read it with an open mind. But when it's contextualized in a message that is laced with personal insults and assumptions about me that he couldn't possibly know because he's never taken a bit of time to get to know anything about me, to even know those things, then yes, I read it through a lens of skepticism. Particularly when the accusation laced in the email is so counterintuitive to my 20 years of experience working with children and adolescents. Some things were said just now that aren't true, so I want to point them out. The ORC investigation report, the ORS investigation report did not say that the board failed to do its job. Not sure why we're promoting lies or false narratives from the board table, but I also want to address the fact that it has been repeatedly critiqued that we need to be responsible for our actions, and I couldn't agree with that more. And I think we could start with the person at this table who cites his colleagues by name repeatedly on social media in negative ways, taking accountability for that action instead of saying things like, oh, it's not personal, don't take it personally. Well, when you cite someone by name and make a characterization of who they are, that is very personal. So take accountability for that. I also would like to suggest that the person who continually complains about a lack of policies and procedures of this incompetent board propose a new one that we might consider. Because it is now, last I checked, today is what, almost December, so we're almost a year into the term. So let's propose a new policy that we could consider instead of complaining about the lack of policy. And I would add that would also be a nice remedy for this issue related to the Bassett and Bassett invoice or charge on the Collins and Blaha invoice. Nobody here on this board liked seeing that. We all asked questions. We all had lots of question marks about that. But the fact of the matter is that the person who was our superintendent at that time no longer works for this district. Our interim superintendent has gone all over the place, done a lot of work trying to get answers to the questions we have. He can't make information up out of thin air that he doesn't have access to. And he's done a lot to try to provide that to us. So if we don't like that, then let's propose some new remedy, some new policy perhaps, so that we have a different check and balance in place for in the future so that this doesn't happen again. Instead of having continuous circular conversations about it, where we just demonize our staff publicly. had the pleasure of visiting Brooklands Elementary, thanks to an invitation by Sarah Crawley. And while I was there, I got to join students who were kind of participating in a peer review of student-authored and illustrated books. We observed an author reading to the class, and then I was also there. It was very exciting for the culmination of their turkey wars. So they passed out a bunch of paper turkeys, one to each class, and the only rule was if someone caught you taking their turkey, you had to give it back. And then whoever had the most won, and I was there for the culmination. So I want to give a special shout out to resource teacher Sarah McGinnis and the SXI paraprofessional Allison Sakura, who built an alliance, worked together, and won that turkey war. And they were very excited, and I was happy to see it. I also volunteered as a judge for the first LEGO League tournament hosted by the Cybercats at Stony Creek High School. And I attended the Superintendent's Business Operations Committee, where we discussed the agenda items we voted on tonight. And as Trustee Blake mentioned, I also attended the Play That Went Wrong at Adams High School, and as always was super impressed by the talent of our students and the staff that prepared them.
Trustee Ennis?
Yeah, just a few things. I also attended the plays at Adams High School and Rochester High School, and just want to give a shout out to Mr. Gollin for his 40 years of dedication to our students in the area of, excuse me, of performing arts. You could tell by the reaction of the students on the stage just how much this particular educator has impacted not only this generation of students, but I'm sure previous ones as well. So for that, I'm very thankful and grateful for his service. I'm looking forward to attending the PAC meeting this week at Ruther Middle School. And I'm also grateful to my board colleagues who approved the funding for me to continue my advocacy for special education students beyond this district. In January, I'll be attending the NSBA Advocacy Institute to advocate again for full funding of IDEA. This has been an annual ask of school board trustees who convene in Washington, D.C. with the NASB or NSBA, asking federal officials to fully fund IDEA, which was passed in the 70s. My hope is that this could potentially be the year. I know last year when I attended, our current state U.S. House representative, who represents our community, Representative John James, gave his verbal commitment to fully funding IDEA. So I'm looking forward to going back to him in January and saying, okay, let's do this. Because not only will this have a positive impact on children with different abilities, but it will also impact children in gen ed as well. So it's a double win for our community if we can get full funding for IDEA. The last thing I want to say is I appreciate when colleagues share information that's pertinent to the roles that we have here at this table. But it's not always what you're asking, it's how you're asking it, it's how you're approaching the subject matter. And while your opinion, Trustee Weaver, has been that it was wrong to shut down the schools for the pandemic, you were not sitting at this table making that decision. There were other individuals who were doing so, and I was one of them, along with my board president sitting here, President Butel. It was some of the toughest times we've ever had. You didn't agree with most of the decisions, and that is your perfect right to do so. But you can ask the questions, but you have to think about how you're asking them, because the way I saw you interact with Mr. Musio and ask questions, it was badgering. It was really embarrassing the way you were behaving. And when you talk about the impact of SEL on our students and how it's detrimental to their well-being, their mental health well-being, it's not just one thing. It's a multitude of things. Yes, it was COVID. Yes, we had a global pandemic that impacted the mental health of our children. But it's also other things that impact the mental health of our children. It's social media. It's how one uses and abuses social media for their own narrative. It's also, we have a very high performing district. And I give major kudos to the teachers that give their all to see our children be successful. But that can also be a toxic culture as well. And I want to share a book that I'm currently reading with my colleagues and recommend that you do it. You read it as well. It's called Never Enough: When Achievement Culture Becomes Toxic and What We Can Do About It. The author is Jennifer Wallace, and she puts forward an interesting premise that, especially in communities that are higher socioeconomic, you have generations of students that are feeling pressure to achieve, feeling pressure to obtain, and feeling like they're not living up to the expectations of their parents and the communities in which they live. So that also impacts mental health. So there's a myriad of issues that impact mental health. So I want to recommend that my colleagues, if you're interested in gaining more knowledge, that you expand your thoughts and consider that application or that book as well. And the last thing I want to say is I'm looking forward to this Thursday evening supporting the Rochester Community Foundation, the Rochester Community Schools Foundation at the Sip and Savor event.
Well, first, I just hope that everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving break and had an opportunity to rest, recharge, and enjoy some time with family and friends. For my board colleagues, I would encourage that anyone who is interested in adding an item to the agenda, that they provide notice. A week would be nice. In fact, if you have yourself and 2 other people who would like to add an agenda item, if you provide notice by the Monday before our meeting, we can add that to the agenda at that point so we don't have to argue about it at our meeting. I'd also like to thank everyone who participated in the focus groups for our strategic planning process. I have heard good feedback, as others have talked about, from those who attended, and also from Scott Fuller, our facilitator. And I think we all look forward to hearing an update at our December 11th meeting. Rochester Area Youth Assistants, also known as RAYA, held their annual meeting in November, where they highlighted programs and events from last year and communicated how RAYA can assist students in our community who need counseling or assistance in covering the costs to participate in social or educational activities. If you or someone you know is in need of assistance, please reach out to the RAYA office. Along with several of my colleagues, I attended the Play That Goes Wrong at Adams, as well as the Mean Girls musical at Rochester High School. I was sad that I was unable to attend the Stony Creek's production, but I heard that they did a great job too. Kudos to everyone in the crew and the cast, the musicians, the directors, and the volunteers. It certainly takes a village of amazing people to make these productions happen. And as others have said, a special shout out to Mr. Gollin at Rochester High School for producing musical productions for 40 years, and he is retiring this year. And that will certainly be a loss to that community. Now we are moving on to Agenda 9.2, which is additional comments by members of the administration. And this allows the administration to share information that they believe is valuable to the board and or the community. Mr. Silveri or anyone else? Mrs. Fragamini?
Yes, thank you very much, President Butel. I just wanted to briefly just speak to the season of gratitude. And our students have left, but our students in our district, along with our staff members and our entire community, has come together for those who have been in need and the monies that they have raised. It has been a pleasure to be in the district in November and see all of the opportunities that we're putting forward to put others first and to really focus in on service to others. And I just want to congratulate you. To the families that are watching this evening, or to our staff who are here, the next 4 weeks before the holidays can bring a lot of joy. It's also a time of a lot of challenge. We want to be very sensitive to that. And the one thing that weighs heavily on our cabinet team's mind is this year, with the opportunity to have free lunches, it doesn't afford us the opportunity to maybe reach out to families who may receive some services or have the ability for some free and reduced actions. So my ask to you, to the community, to those that you know that may need help, the neighborhood house is incredible, but your relationships with your teachers and your administrators is a wonderful place to feel safe and have that confidential assistance. So please know that this community comes together. Unity is in the word community, and I'm telling you that the people that we share leadership with every day and the staff members that care so deeply about your children would not want any family to not have any resources available. So please know that those conversations are confidential, and I have every confidence that our staff, along with our administrators, will do everything we can to support you. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, thank you, Debbie. On the Bassett and Bassett issue, so there's been references made to information I provided to the board, so in fairness, I'm just going to read what I provided to the board. Starting with the question that was raised, why did Collins and Blaha charge the district about $40,000 between September of 2022 through February of 2023 to disperse funds to the PR firm Bassett and Bassett? So before I go on with that, I'll address the issue of it taking a lengthy period of time for the question to be addressed. I'll gladly own part of that. I can't own all of it. I was not here when those requests first came in, but I can own part of that. My view of this, I suppose, as I looked at it, is that personally I was not alarmed by what I saw, and perhaps I didn't take the need to look into it that seriously initially. My fault. I gave a kind of a broad general answer to the question that was obviously unsatisfying. So I'll own that. You know, it's a learning organization, so you live and learn, and I will do that. Having taken the time to look into it, I'll go on with the rest of what this says. I've researched the relationship between Bassett and Bassett, the Collins and Blaha law firm, and Rochester Community Schools. To answer the question posed above with fidelity, I did the following: spoke with central administrators Debbie Fragomeni, Matt McDaniel, and Lori Grine. Spoke with Leland Bassett of Bassett and Bassett. Spoke with Gary Collins of Collins and Blaha. Spoke with Kevin Sutton of Miller Johnson. Spoke with Rob Dietzel of the Troon Law Firm. Reviewed all invoices submitted by Collins and Blaha for services provided by Bassett and Bassett from September 2022 through February 2023. Attached those. Reviewed our contract with Bassett and Bassett. Attached that as well. It is my understanding that Bassett and Bassett was engaged by Collins and Blaha in a type of crisis response role to identify and respond to increasingly vocal and strong criticisms leveled against the district via social media, the news media, and elsewhere, as well as a large volume of FOIA requests. In its role, Bassett and Bassett would identify negative media activity and coordinate with the law firm and school officials on whether a response was warranted, and if so, the content of the response. After speaking with the attorneys from Collins and Blaha, Miller Johnson, and Troon, there was a consistent theme. It is a fairly common practice for a law firm to retain public relations experts to assist school districts with such matters. This was separate from the engagement that Bassett and Bassett had directly with the district, where they more broadly provided guidance on strategic communications. The attached invoices simply listed disbursement fees in quotations, that's exactly what they said, for Bassett and Bassett, without providing any further details. The specifics of the interactions that these invoices covered are protected by attorney-client privilege, which speaks to why Matt McDaniel responded so cautiously when asked about this at public meetings. The bottom line is that there was absolutely nothing illegal or improper about this arrangement between Bassett and Bassett, Collins and Blaha, and RCS as supported by the attorneys I discussed this with. To reinforce a point that was previously made, this is a common industry practice. After a comprehensive review of what was requested and considering that all of the parties involved in making this arrangement, Bassett and Bassett, Collins and Blaha and Superintendent Shaner are no longer associated with Rochester Community Schools. There is, and this is my opinion, of course, nothing more that needs to be done. I can assure you that we are no longer using a strategic communications firm. On a related note, we are committed to providing all invoices to members of the board on a regular basis and are working on the best delivery system. I expect to be able to update you on this very soon. It is my hope that we can move on from this matter and put the focus back on the present and future, and first and foremost, on our students. So again, I'm expressing my opinion. Others have expressed theirs, and that's fine. That's how this is supposed to work, right? So in my opinion, I did answer the question, you know, and given that the question was asked repeatedly, very explicitly, very specific, you just heard the answer that I gave. The question was answered. I suppose the remaining question is, where do we go from here? I will say this, once the answer was given, it was immediately met by a lot of additional questions and requests for additional information, which in my 3 months here now is not uncommon. We get an awful lot of questions and requests for information coming from individual board members that keep us pretty darn busy chasing after answers and responses. So I am concerned, with the notion that we just need to keep digging on this matter. It is what it is. I understand that there are board members unhappy that this arrangement existed. I understand that they would love to know the details of what was discussed confidentially during that arrangement. We don't have those details. There is nothing more to provide, so I'm not sure what continuing to ask the question is going to produce. And I'm concerned too that, again, we're talking about something where, what do you do when you are confronted with a situation where the opinion is that we don't like what happened, and we want to make sure that this does not happen again? I think there is a policy solution to this, right? There's the opportunity to put a policy in place that would prevent something like this from happening again, and it's done. And we can move on mercifully and talk about other things, hopefully, that have a lot more to do with students and teaching and learning, and this particular issue has basically nothing to do with that. But this continuous effort to reach back in the past and continue to dig to find something to get upset about, something to be outraged about, something to find fault with, and then use it to attack is very concerning. I don't believe that that's what the district and community wants its superintendent doing. I don't think it's what they want their central administrators and others doing. Spending so much time on issues that basically are so far afield from students and teaching and learning. Time is finite. We don't have an endless amount of time with which to do the work that is so critical in our district, and there's so much work to be done. I keep saying it, I'm going to keep saying it. You maybe are sick of it already, and you'll be more sick of it by the time I leave here at the end of June, but this is an excellent school district, an imperfect one, of course, and there are things we need to work on, but it's an excellent school district. I would love to see us spend our time focusing forward, but we can't focus forward if we keep spending our time in the past on things that we can't change, other than to learn from the past and put things in place that would prevent those things that we dislike from happening again. And we have that opportunity to, so let's do that. In terms of a couple of other things that have come up, the one example of something that is more directly connected to student learning, and so I'm a little bit more amenable to that one, I think, is the literacy issue. Just so that we're all clear, what we've invited board members to do in December, and we would provide additional opportunities if so desired, is to spend time in one of our elementaries in classrooms looking at what we're doing in regard to early literacy. What are the materials that we're utilizing? What services are we providing to students? What do we do when students are struggling to learn? What do we do when students are learning at an advanced rate? How do we adjust what we do? How do we use these materials? In part, just to further understanding, but in part too, when we get to the work session in January, we've talked about that being different from what we did before. We have. And where I see that as being different is we're inviting board members to provide us with questions and concerns that they have about early literacy, which we're hoping that the opportunity to go into the elementary schools and spend some time is going to give them the opportunity to, perhaps that'll generate more questions, which you can then provide to us and we can be prepared to address them. And part of that dialogue then is kind of where do we go from here? So that's in place. There's also the possibility that through strategic planning, if this truly is a large issue of concern and something that needs to be addressed, my guess is that it may well rise to the top as an area of focus through strategic planning too. But we're not looking to just kind of put it aside. We're looking to approach it in the right way and to be well informed, to address the questions and concerns that exist, and then determine where we go from there. And that's all happening relatively soon. It's just about December. We're talking about these visits coming in December to classrooms and then having this work session in January. So that part of this is imminent. Just more broadly, you know, again, I just want to see us focusing on primarily students and what's best for our students, but also, somebody said it, and I would agree with it, slight second to that is our staff and supporting our staff members and helping to empower them to be as highly effective as they can be with our students and for our students. The good news there, as I've said many times too, is that we're blessed in this district to have amazing staff members. And I say staff broadly, and I want to say it broadly because it applies broadly. That applies to administrators and teachers and paraprofessionals and secretaries and I mean, you name it, right? Any and all of our employees. Part of the reason I spend considerable time out and about in buildings and seeing for myself is I want to be able to speak to it firsthand. I am able to speak to it firsthand. And we're very, very fortunate with the caliber of people we have. And it does concern me when we say things that really raise suspicion, because I don't believe for 1 second that anybody in this district is doing anything illegal, improper, inappropriate. I don't. I see people working hard in the best interest of students and giving their level best and doing everything they can do for this organization. I'm going to give this quick example. We sprung a leak at University Hills, right? And found out later that this happened, I believe on Thanksgiving Day, was it? That the leak occurred. We were lucky that somebody went into the building for another purpose on Saturday and found it. If they hadn't and we'd found this this morning, it would have been a much bigger problem. And so we're grateful. Things could always be worse, right? So bad situation, could have been worse. We're grateful that it wasn't. But the point of that is watching people spring into action. So here it is Thanksgiving weekend. I'm being contacted on Saturday by building administration, district administration, others who are just, leaping to the moment to address the problem. Contacted again by various people on Sunday, on Thanksgiving weekend, at the building, problem solving, doing whatever they can to try to address this. Obviously, we're having to make a decision about whether or not we're able to hold school today, and we had to make the decision that we couldn't. We're back at it again this morning. I was over at the building first thing this morning. Ultimately, we made the decision, too, that we have to close for tomorrow just to make sure that we've had ample opportunity to not only extract and dry things out, but to clean up adequately and make sure that the building is fully ready to be inhabited again by our students. So we're doing that, and we're cautiously optimistic that we'll be ready for Wednesday. I'm not going to sit here and give you a guarantee because you never know, but at this moment, it's looking pretty good, and we're hopeful for that. But one of the things I saw when I was there this morning was, in fact, I walked into one of the classrooms, accompanied, right? Walked into the classroom to see what had occurred. One of the classrooms where the most damage had occurred, and there were numerous staff members in the classroom, teachers and others working to take out materials that were destroyed and just trying to help address the situation. So my question was, I don't know the staff members terribly well, whose classroom is this? You know, who's the teacher? Well, the teacher wasn't there yet. The teacher was in the building, not in the classroom yet. How impressive is that, right? These are all people who, this is not even their classroom, but what are they doing first thing in the morning? They're there pitching in to help the teacher whose classroom this was, right? All hands on deck. That's one small example of the commitment, the work ethic, the dedication that I see from our employees day in, day out, constantly all the time. So we're going to make mistakes. We're going to make decisions that you make with the information you have at the time that you have to make the decision in the best way that you can with students in mind. And look, I can reflect on lots of decisions that I made over the course of my career where later, as I had the chance to reflect and maybe had more information, I would freely acknowledge if I had it to do over again, I would decide differently, right? It's going to happen too. But fundamentally, what bothers me is if there are questions about people's motivation and about their commitment and about them being about anything other than what's best for this district, because I fully believe that the people that we have here, we're fortunate to have, that is what they're all about. And again, I hope moving forward that we do keep the focus forward. We keep it on students and on what we can do to improve the educational experience of our students, build on the considerable strengths we have in order to do that, and continue to support staff and even build on those successes in the best way that we can so that we can take an excellent school district and continue to get better. Thank you.
Madam President, I move to suspend the rules in order to add a board discussion about having a literacy town hall work session on January 29th to the December 11th regular meeting agenda.
Okay, so there is a motion to suspend our, what did you say, motion to suspend our rules?
Move to suspend the rules in
Okay,
order to
moved
put this on the
by
next agenda.
trustee Lukui, support by trustee Weaver. All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no.
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 Oh, I was hoping that
Did,
would give enough time.
trustee Blake? I'm sorry, I didn't know which one. Two to four, at this point, we will not continue with that at this moment. Announcements. On December 2nd, there is a Board of Education special meeting. That's a Saturday, 9 a.m. here in West Middle School. December 4th, there is no school for students. December 11th, there is a Board of Education regular meeting at 6 o'clock, also here at West Middle School. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? Moved by trustee Annis, support by trustee Gupta. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's a 6-0 vote, and we are adjourned at 9:16. Thank you, and have a good night.